All Dogs Go to Heaven. And I just went to hell. It's an interesting franchise to look at, spawned from a trippy, weirdly dark comedy drama musical about a dead dog. It bombed at the box office, and the career of its directors never quite recovered, but it for some reason had enough appeal on home video to spawn a few sequels and even a TV series. I think there's a lot to talk about it that hasn't been said, either because people rightfully don't care, or because it gets dismissed as a forgettable string of movies from yesteryear. And I'm here to tell you, no. I think there's a lot of joy to be mined here. Every weird artistic decision, good or bad, is worth looking at. And by the end of this video, I want you to take a second look at these movies and appreciate them for all the wild stuff that goes down in them. Since it's literally about the Christian heaven and hell, but with dogs, the lore surrounding it is really interesting and weird. It brings up a lot of questions, especially once you get into the sequels. That's really what compelled me to make this. Nobody else has tried to solve the All Dogs Go to Heaven lore, and I'm gonna try for that achievement over the next 2 hours. Actually, I tricked you. This is a video about The Land Before Time. April Fools. Ex-Disney animator Don Bluth had just directed his second film under Steven Spielberg, with George Lucas there too looking over his shoulder. It's arguably his most successful film commercially, and it had more staying power than its direct competitor at the time. A lot more staying power. It cemented Don Bluth Studios as this true competitor to Disney, a big player in the animation game. But that wasn't enough. Don had had his fill of working under the big guys at Universal. There wasn't that creative freedom he had with his other outings, and he didn't like when Spielberg cut out all the scary stuff from the Baby Dinosaur movie. Everybody at the studio packed up, moved to Ireland, and said, you know what, we're gonna make a cartoon on our own again, with blackjack and hookers. No, literally. What started as a Burt Reynolds vehicle about a dog detective turned into an overcomplicated Dante-esque dog epic, turned into a 1940s inspired story about a little girl who can talk to animals, using her powers to bet on horse races, under the guidance of a dog, who is undead, played by Burt Reynolds. All Dogs Go to Heaven follows Charlie B. Barkin, who escapes from the local pound and is later killed by his old partner, Carface. There's a power struggle in the dog casino they both own, and Carface wants it all to himself. Since framing him didn't work, they devise a plan to get rid of Charlie for good. They get him drunk, yes really, and run him over with a car, yes really. Charlie is dead, but not for long. He manages to sneak out of heaven by winding up a watch that resets his life. He comes back and tries to exact revenge on Carface for doing him in. The plot takes a wild turn when he meets an orphan girl named Anne-Marie. All this time, Carface has been using her ability to talk to animals to fix races at the casino. Charlie takes her in under the guise of helping her escape, but then ends up using her to do the same. After some shenanigans, he realizes that maybe there are things in life that matter more than money, and sacrifices himself to save her. Since he made the ultimate sacrifice, he's forgiven by the powers that be, and allowed into heaven once more. There's a lot I left out of the plot summary, and we'll get into that later. My thesis here is that it plays better to a modern palette, one with a far lower attention span, and with a taste for colorful characters in dark situations. I'd compare it to Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy. That one had the same childlike innocence mixed with gross, scary creepiness, and it got a huge cult following online a few years back. People like to throw a lot of criticisms at it, like how the story doesn't make sense and jumps around, but that adds to my enjoyment in a way. On a blind first watch through, you think you know where it's going, but they repeatedly pull the rug out from under you, and in far different ways, might I add. If you've grown up like me, you've probably seen dozens of funny talking animal movies with dopey comic relief sidekicks and the main characters who have to work together under false pretenses with a redemption story in the middle of that. It has those elements, but its execution is so scatterbrained that it actually becomes fresh, dare I say subversive. And speaking of DreamWorks and Pixar too, this one has some dark subject matter you don't see children's animated films cover with this much earnestness. Not only the child mistreatment plotline, but the premise itself. The idea of heaven and hell being taken seriously and making the audience crap themselves with the prospect of a silly talking dog burning in eternal damnation. Even though there's a happy ending, it's played as bittersweet and somewhat tragic. The title itself was even a point of contention. According to multiple sources, the studio was pressured to change it because it was too edgy for a family film at the time. Bluth himself insisted and everyone backed off, except for in Germany, France, Norway, and Sweden. Oops. The movie isn't all death and wackiness for the sake of it. There are characters who have arcs and motivations that you can track throughout. In the middle of all the craziness, all the colorful non sequiturs, all the... We'll get to that. Charlie, Anne-Marie, and Itchy. It has those strong character relationships at the center. That's something that Don Bluth excelled at in his more well-remembered films from the 80s. It's the same way Mrs. Brisby and the love she has for her children drives the story in Secret of Nim, or how Littlefoot and his friends learn to be there for each other during hard Land Before times. Compared to Rockadoodle by the same director, parts of it have that energy All Dogs had, but with no one to really care about, it goes in one ear out the other. It's not all noise, even though there is a lot of it throughout. If it all was, there wouldn't be a reason for people to cry at the ending. Charlie as the protagonist, played here by Burt Reynolds, if you didn't figure it out already, is just what the role calls for. He and the animation are great at portraying this smooth Han Solo type character. Right at the beginning when he sneaks out of heaven, they set up just how easy it is for him to manipulate people, and you believe he has that Sigma grind set, the way he basically just picks this character up and twirls her around and is like, wow, yeah, you're such a good dancer, while she does nothing. Is a fun little gag. There's bits like that throughout the movie. Itchy here is played by character actor Dom DeLuise, and you can tell he and Burt were friends in real life the way they play off each other. Of all the bajillion animated films he was in, this is where they really knew how to use him. He adds something essential to the story here. I don't think Charlie would have been this enjoyable to watch if he didn't have somebody to play off of in such a natural sounding way. This was the first time in the studio's history they'd have two actors record in the same booth. It makes sense with all the obvious improv and lines that were thought up on the fly.
You know, he's got something up his sleeve. Yeah, a gun.
My favorite instance of that is Itchy's Oscar monologue, where he goes off on Charlie for putting together this whole scheme and putting themselves in danger. It's really, really great stuff, and shows he's more than some guy who's there to fall over and make the kids in the audience laugh. Carface, the main antagonist, is meant to be the embodiment of all things nasty. He doesn't register as bland because they give him a pretty good motivation, greed. You know, we've all been there. It makes him a pretty good contrast to Charlie, who gets smart by the end. Vic Tayback, I don't know who that is, does a good job at portraying him. One of those instances where they matched the voice perfectly to the character design. Charles Nelson Riley, Uncle Croc himself, plays the bumbling henchman killer. He is great at playing an absolute goober. Like the main two stars, these two recorded in the same booth. It's not a game changer like Charlie and Itchy, but there are one or two spots where they really complement each other.
Killer, shut up, shut up, shut up!
Anne-Marie, on the complete opposite end, is a great embodiment of innocence, perfect as a foil to Charlie. They write her as being more than just a pawn in these two dogs' casino custody battle. She's a character who, in a world full of nastiness, doesn't know anything other than what she perceives as being right and wrong. Tragically, this was the last role from Judith Barcy, who does an amazing job. She adds a sense of realism to the character that fits right in with the way the others interact. Previously, she played Ducky in The Land Before Time. One of that movie's biggest strengths, in my opinion, was the voice direction, so it's no different here. Minor characters are really given a chance to shine, especially with how expressive the animation style is. Sometimes new settings are introduced with some funny little side bit, almost something that could be an animated short on its own. These rats, the horses, this angel dog.
I want you.
The whole thing with the orphanage, and I seem to recall something about a certain reptile with a certain pronounced facial feature.
Oh! It's a big-lipped alligator moment.
Big-lipped alligator moment.
We have you. We have you. We have you. We have...
Every video I look up about All Dogs Go to Heaven has to explain what a big-lipped alligator moment is and how it doesn't mean anything. But you know what? Here's your homework. Go look up what that means if you don't know what it is. During the third act, when Charlie tries to take Anne-Marie back from her new adoptive family, the two suddenly fall down a pit where you think you're going to be subjected to horrible racist stereotypes.
What'd they say? Tell them to give me back my watch.
I can't, Charlie. They talk funny.
But no, Charlie howls in fear, and the alligator takes that as a literal dog whistle that he too is a fellow music lover. He's then forced into a musical number where they sing about singing.
It's just you and me. Let's make music together. Let's make sweet harmony.
Originally, there were plans to reference King Gator earlier in the script, and then have that build-up lead to the gag where he's not as scary as everyone thinks. But those earlier bits got cut out, I guess, during the animation process. If they can ADR all the stuff about the machine gun actually being a Flash Gordon ray gun,
I got a Flash Gordon thermo-atomic ray gun. A ray gun.
then they can put some line in about the alligator who lives in the sewers. It even would have worked in that same scene. Anyways, the song slaps, I love it, and it's a perfect example of how beautifully off the wall the film can be. Oh, there's a story and he's doing, whoa, big-lipped alligator moment. My theory is that big-lipped alligator moment is a psyop meant to distract you from the one song that actually needed to be cut from the movie. The stretch of time between when Charlie sets up his new empire, they go to the church so that I can pay child support, Anne-Marie's song, the hell sequence, would have been great, but right in in the middle, they have this number about sharing a slice of pizza, and it doesn't really play into anything. It's not really funny, it's catchy, sure, but it doesn't say anything about the characters, where they are in the story. These puppies never play into anything, it's not framed as a fun side tangent or gag. This is supposed to be an important moment, but they never give a reason why. It's overshadowed by the two parts that come right after. Charlie's Nightmare, which had to actually be cut down to get a G rating, and Soon You'll Come Home, this really emotional song from Anne-Marie. Two moments that are very clear plot points. Because of that, and this, the movie feels less like a musical, rather a film that happens to have songs in it, and you understand the distinction I'm making. It's the difference between something like The Little Mermaid and the Rugrats movie.
Man, they cut my cord.
Oh, consider yourself lucky.
And about the songs themselves, You Can't Keep a Good Dog Down is the absolute little baby sweetheart. Everybody loves it. Best song in the movie. I agree. This is the first musical number we hear, right after Charlie breaks out of the pound.
You can't keep a good dog down.
No, you can't.
No.
It is genuinely hard not to have a smile on your face when they get on that piano and start singing.
A bit of Siam.
Okay, I met with community leaders and I'm going to learn and listen.
Let Me Be Surprised is another banger. This is a semi-duet between Charlie and this then unnamed angel character about why he wants to go back to Earth. It doesn't fit as well, but the style they go for is so well executed, and it's weird to see it in an animated movie.
When all's said and done, it's fun not to know what keeps my...
Burt Reynolds coming through with those golden pipes, complimented by singer-slash-actress Melba Moore. It sounds like a nice steamy latte with a little cream that looks like a swan on top. I love it. It is so hard to picture Burt Reynolds doing a cartoon Scooby-Doo voice for Charlie, like he originally wanted. He works so well. The sequence shows off a lot of unique visual direction. The idea of the life clocks is so creative in itself, and it's portrayed in such a dreamlike atmosphere. Oh god, I'm turning into the game dude.
Look how the sunlight behind the oval clouds and the dreamlike background shines over the simplicity of the reflective ice while the incredible dreamlike music plays and the scary thing.
The rest of heaven too. This is where you can see a bit of the New Orleans Mardi Gras look they went for in the art department. Beyond pretty set dressing, the location has a little more intent behind it, with the religious purpose of Fat Tuesday tying into the movie's themes. Do you think this counts as, like, a holiday movie then? Being /Jen here, I can't think of any other Mardi Gras movies off the top of my head aside from Candyman 2. I have not seen The Princess and the Frog in many years. Commenters let me know if that takes place then or not. Tangent aside, the settings are gorgeous, and there's a lot of varied locations. The old church has to be my favorite, just for the range of emotions that this setting alone can portray through color, and choosing which areas to focus on. I will say that the visuals aren't perfect. Sometimes background characters can look like clones of each other or the main characters, or aren't even animated in some shots. And I need to also point out the standard very small glances at all the creepy rotoscoped humans you get in these movies. It's worse in An American Tail, but not looking too good here. In order to get a G rating, there are parts they had to cut out. I talked about the guns and the hell sequence, but there's bits like Charlie getting hit with the car that needed to be toned down. Also cursing, oh no.
Damn that car face, I'll kill him. That car face, I'll kill him.
Plans were made to make a redone director's cut, but the 35mm print was literally stolen. One of my favorite scenes is this part where Charlie's trying to get Anne-Marie to sleep, and Itchy's having absolutely none of it. Everything, the performances, animation, the way it's storyboarded, bleeds so much personality and tells you everything you need to know about where the characters are at this point in the story. The way Charlie suavely narrates, not putting much thought into what he's saying, and Anne-Marie is eating it up, Itchy protesting only because Robin Hood is giving to the poor instead of taking the money for himself.
What kind of hood is this guy anyway? Giving dough to the poor without taking his cut.
And the amazing visual gag that all three of them are illiterate and the book is actually War and Peace. There's a lot of thought put into how everybody moves in this. And I know it comes with the territory, but certain characters embody their personality with how they're animated. Charlie has such a wide range of expressions, and at points they really lean into this bombastic style of movement. There's a rubberiness to the characters that comes out sometimes during certain scenes, and it pushes everything even further. I can't imagine what it was like to animate the scene of all three characters standing on each other's shoulders like this. So many fun bits during this part alone. All Dogs Go to Heaven is a fun, wild ride with some out there scenes and characters, but at the center is a story with a lot of emotional draw. Charlie saving Anne-Marie's life while thinking he's going to go to hell for stealing the watch, and then that scene of him telling her goodbye is so powerful. The film has both real maturity and superficial edge that I don't really get from a lot of recent animated movies I've seen, even from some of the things I grew up with. It's one of, if not my favorite from Don Bluth. While something like Nim might be a better overall movie, All Dogs is a better showcase of his talents as a creator, I'd argue. It's got that whole syrupy sweetness contrasted with the most terrifying thing they could think of mentality that the guy is known for, and it's pushed to its absolute extreme here. It expects a lot from the audience, and gives a lot in return. Even more than The Secret of Nim, I might argue. But that's where you get into some big problems. The previous year, everybody at Don Bluth Studios raised their glasses in the air because they released a major hit next to some random stupid dog movie. In 1989, they released their stupid dog movie the exact same day as The Little Mermaid. Oops. The Little Mermaid was a return to form for Disney, fun for the whole family. Love story, catchy songs, the whole package. You put that out next to a violent, depressing movie about a dog dying, audiences are gonna make their choice. And that's bad because Oliver and The Land Before Time actually helped each other in the box office the year before. I guess nobody wanted to see All Dogs. Audiences were apathetic to it, and from what I read, critics actively played favorite child with Disney. Roger Ebert was the one who said it best.
Well, this movie suffers from the fact that it comes out at the same time as The Little Mermaid, which is really an animated classic.
Critics came after the story, and yeah, what am I gonna say? I need people to understand that this was 1989, where the only animated films coming out in the West were Disney, and Don Bluth was this new thing that sprung up. Then you go to the early 90s, and there's heapings of animated movies coming out, all wanting to be Disney or trying to throw themselves into the ring to make money. To these critics, probably a mid-Don Bluth looked great in retrospect compared to a Rover Dangerfield or a Once Upon a Forest, or even a bad Don Bluth. The movie signified the start of a downturn in his career to a lot of people, but that's not what this video is about. There are a million videos that can tell you about that. We're just focusing on the movie. It looked like it was over. If this movie was gonna have any hope of cultural relevance, they needed a miracle. They needed Downey. All Dogs did have some small tie-ins. Due to, I guess, some kind of rights issue, they weren't able to go all out. Wendy's had kids' meal toys, a truly awful game for home computers. But the biggest promotion they had was a collaboration with Downy Fabric Softener detergent, some product, who cares. Procter & Gamble poured a bunch of money into a co-advertising campaign with The Wizard of Oz on VHS the previous year, and All Dogs happened to be a family film MGM had the rights to that they could promote. And promote it they did. TV commercials, other tie-ins, and a promotional screener that for all intents and purposes is canon to the All Dogs Go to Heaven universe, I think.
Uncle Itchy,
What, Little Scratch?
can we get a video with a dog in it like that one with Toto and the Witch?
That's Dom DeLuise reprising his role as Itchy, and veteran voice actress Kathy Cavadini as Nephew Scratch. He's not Charlie's kid, and they never explain whose kid he is. I don't know. I also don't know why Itchy is a basset hound instead of a wiener dog. They go around explaining all the wonderful in-store standees you can order for your local Blockbuster. The Blockbuster that you're managing, of course, because you're a manager at a Blockbuster. Before watching a few trailers explaining marketing statistics and all that, even plugging Secret of Nim on VHS. Order copies of it from MGM for your video store, please. It's a relic. A relic of a time where you could go all out for something like this. And when you could sell a movie based on the man's name.
My pups at home just love Don Bluth's movies, like An American Tail and The Land Before Time.
There actually is another commercial from this campaign that as of now is lost media, and with new animation no less. Maybe in a future video I'll go into that more, but the only reliable information about it exists in a single press kit I was able to find, so there's not much. Information about the VHS sales figures isn't available at my fingertips, but I know it had to have been successful, because All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 is a movie that exists, and you don't just make a sequel to a flop like that. Okay, maybe after an ending like that, you need something to cheer you up. Play a cozy little video game, maybe. Well, let me shout out a game I've been playing a lot of that's available now on Apple Arcade. Tamagotchi Adventure Kingdom, today's sponsor. I'm pretty sure a lot of us know the Tamagotchi characters, originating from the classic virtual pet toys. This game lets you explore the world in a whole new way. Overall, I highly recommend it. It's a very well made and relaxing experience. The game features a lot of different fun environments. One of my favorite things about it is the way everything looks. The lighting makes a lot of the areas pop pop with an extra bit of color, and there's a great amount of detail put into all these places you get to explore. I really like whenever you enter an indoor area and you see all the small touches. They really did their job at making a whole adorable Tamagotchi world to discover. Another thing that added to my experience was how everything has these cute little faces. The appeal that these have even extends to some of the characters. My favorite was Hammerchi, who helps you build stuff. And as for characters in general, there's so many to meet. I found myself walking around just to see what kind of quirky dialogue these guys had. Outside of the main character Mamechi, you can even play as other characters you meet along the way, each with their own unique abilities. It's a pretty cozy game. A great mechanic is being able to decorate your own space, and even have your heroes wear different outfits. More games need to do this. Being able to wear a goofy propeller hat enhanced my experience tenfold. There's this cutesy tone throughout that I think makes it a great comfort game. There's no combat or anything. A lot of the game focuses on helping people, or the environment. Now the game is on Apple Arcade, which requires a subscription. But if you haven't subscribed before, you can get a free trial by clicking the link in the description or in the pinned comment, or scanning the QR code on screen right now. Thanks to Tamagotchi Adventure Kingdom for sponsoring this video. All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 is a lot of things. It's intriguing, it's confusing, it's interesting visually in some parts, but it's also boring, poorly executed in areas, and it's for sure not All Dogs Go to Heaven 1. Set some time after the first, Charlie and Carface are living it up in heaven, but Charlie's not too keen on staying there forever. Whoa, here we go again. Carface steals Gabriel's horn, an artifact that opens the pearly gates, and Charlie volunteers to go back to Earth and retrieve it. Instead of going right for the horn, Charlie meets a kid. A 90s kid. This is David. David's surrogate dog mom, Sasha, isn't too happy with him hanging around this street mutt, but Charlie lies and tells him he's a guardian angel sent to help David, and then he tries to do something. Meanwhile, Carface is scheming with a mysterious dog named Red, who turns out to be a cat from hell. That should have been this movie's subtitle. Who wants to use Gabriel's horn to suck all the dogs out of heaven and put them in Alcatraz. Eventually, after some shenanigans, they stop Red and he gets sucked down to where the sun don't shine. There's such an obvious character regression here. Charlie's back to where he was when he died in the first one. They try to take it in a different direction, but I don't know exactly what they're going for. Opening, they seem to make it pretty clear. Heaven is boring and way too pure for him. So he gets to Earth, and now what does he do? They set up Charlie lusting after our new female lead, but then when David shows up and wants to perform magic for tourists in Cannery Square, he's on board with that, even though Sasha is very much against that and just wants to help him. So does he want her or not? I think if you were trying to win this character over, you'd do what she said and parent the kid, and try to bring him home. And what does he want to do with the kid? What, so instead of setting up a gambling empire and that being his downfall, Charlie instead wants to get quarters in a hat in a filthy street market that he has to split with a 10-year-old. I get that they wanted the main conflict to be Charlie's duty to get the horn versus him wanting to stay on Earth, but they never establish what exactly he wants when he gets there. Does he want quarters in a hat in a filthy street market that he has to split with a 10-year-old? Does he want Sasha? Does he want to just be on Earth for as long as he can? He makes a deal with the devil to get this collar that lets him interact with the mortal realm, and the part during the third act where it wears off right as everything's going his way is really well done. I just wish they had more earlier on in the film to back that up. I think what they were going for is that he wanted to go back to Earth for selfish ways, but after meeting the lady and the kid, he realizes that he really just wants a family. And it's supposed to parallel David, who realizes that family is good, but it's undercooked on Charlie's end. And the push and pull between David and Sasha only helps to make it more confusing, because parts of that story are clearly meant to have some weight to them. All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 is one of the most 90s movies to ever exist, and not just for the visual style, we'll get to that, but David as a character is the least common denominator Bart Simpson, Macaulay Culkin, hip relatable 90s boy from a family movie. Looking at this concept art that they still somehow use for official releases, you could see they were going to take it even further. I think this type of character in this movie could have been great, and what they do with him isn't awful, but there's a more obvious way they could have taken it. I think what you could have done was a reverse of the first movie, where it's the kid who's the bad one, and it's the dog who has to show them that there are more important things in the world than money, in a hat, in a filthy street market, that he has to split with a dog. And you could also have that rub off on Charlie, streamline his character arc too, make him realize that he likes helping people or something, like a guardian angel.
Huh, sneak that reference in.
What we do get is a plot about his mom being gone and the stepmom and having a new kid. That's why he's running away and wants to make a career out of something filthy street market. They go to Cannery Square and he learns the hard way that his family matters more than hat money. We see David's parents a few times during the movie, once at the police station and again at the end. It doesn't have that edge or emotional emotional weight if you compare him to Anne-Marie. Not to play Oppression Olympics with children in these talking dog movies, but at least this kid has parents. And I think if you took him further, really made him that Bart Simpson type character, or showed some serious consequences for running away beyond, oh, his parents look a little sad, you could have had something like the first movie. That's what I imagine it would be like if Bluth was still at the helm. The general cartoony tone and lighter character drama tells me they were going for something more safe. You can tell why they didn't go for it, but I think it would have been a lot more interesting if they went with the original concept for what his parents were gonna look like. Would have been a whole different movie, but anything, dude, anything. Overall, there's just too much going on in the story, and it all gets muddied. And isn't that funny? Isn't that what people say about the first movie? It's got more of that standard structure, but it buckles under the weight of everything they try to do. There's only so much room on the main character couch in a 90-minute movie. They set up Sasha as a love interest. Charlie hits on her over and over again and annoys her until they sing a love song about the special bond they share. No joke, he harasses her all day and then she turns around like, I will always be with you. They needed to develop her more or cut her out entirely. She has the same problem as a lot of the characters where after their setup, they just kind of phase out for the entire middle portion. She's a stray who meets this kid and wants to help him. Charlie wastes the one miracle on this, and now she can talk.
Of all the arrogant, presumptuous, egotistical mutts Now you talk!
He can talk, he can talk, he can talk! I can sing!
And if only you hearing me say the typical obvious joke was just a dream.
Isn't given much to do after.
Reading.
I'd be good at that.
Top 10 adult jokes you missed in kids' movies. She and David fuse into one glob that Charlie needs to care about, and then she hangs around until he comes back at the end. Itchy is still Charlie's sidekick that he can bounce off of, as well as being a larger source of conflict. Throughout the film, Itchy basically wants things to go smoothly, but instead of their dog crime ring, he wants to get the horn and go. How does the timeline work here? 2 is set in the 90s this time around, and Itchy just now is getting into heaven. So he would have to be alive for 50 years after the first movie. How does a dog live that long? Maybe he went to dog purgatory for a while and they cleansed him enough or something? The only way to settle this is if there were some kind of canon media that shows Itchy being alive in the 90s. Oh wait! Dom DeLuise returns for the voice, and I don't really remember them giving him any fun material to work with. I think it might be because he isn't working off of Burt Reynolds. We don't get those fun little moments like in 1. Charlie here is played by Charlie Sheen, and I'll give him a compliment and say he's not the worst Charlie voice. He just doesn't leave an impression. Whip It Angel, whoever comes back, and by some act of God they give her a name. Annabelle has more screen time, but she's not a main character. She happens to be the head angel here, and the one trying to keep Charlie in check. She got recast as Bebe Neuwirth, and the voice she puts on works well with her being more of an authority figure. In 1, she came off as kinda ditzy, but you can tell she took things seriously. Here she's completely fed up with Charlie. I think that's what 50 years being around this guy does to you. Carface is more of a henchman this time around. He's voiced by Ernest Borgnine going forward, and he turns the character into something completely different. Wow, here we have Mermaid Man playing a character who really is evil.
We can open any safe or bank vault in the world! Buy more cards!
He's portrayed as a complete dope here, and I love it. I like the idea that all those years in heaven softened him up, even though he still tries to be a bad guy. My personal all dogs go to heaven theory headcanon. For what he is, Red is a great main antagonist. His character design and voice performance by OG Sweeney Todd George Hearn absolutely carry. He knows exactly what kind of movie he's in.
And all thanks to Charlie Barkin.
I think All Dogs is a franchise carried by great performances, and he's up there with one of my favorites.
3 cheers for treachery!
They even put in a little Sweeney Todd reference during his musical number. How nice. But this is All Dogs Go to Heaven 2. We don't have time to develop anything, not even the main villain's evil plot. He wants the horn and wants to manipulate Charlie to get it.
Only angels can hear its heavenly tone.
I get it, since Charlie's still an angel and Carface isn't no more. But with that, Red sends Carface after them to get the horn when they go to the police station. He then only now finds out about Alcatraz, even though he lives in San Francisco, or maybe happened to materialize wherever the horn was. And the horn itself, the horn is going in my bullet point list for characters in my outline. There's not enough weight given to what it does. All the dogs not getting into heaven is a huge threat, but with Annabelle sending Charlie of all people to get it, and then letting him futz around on Earth without forcibly forcibly beaming him up makes it feel like the characters aren't taking it seriously enough. They set up that the horn can open any door near where it's played, but they never use it for anything. Carface mentions it once, and it's used for a gag where Charlie tries to get it from the police station, but they immediately forget. You can touch the horn, use it to open the door, what are you doing? All it does is add another thing to worry about that we immediately forget because they're already balancing all this on top of each other. They had all their pieces, they just needed to put them together in a way that can fit and make sense. The story is executed well enough, but it needed a few more drafts. I think you could keep the whole thing about Charlie wanting to go to Earth, keep the horn, keep Sasha in the movie, the kid, maybe have Charlie find the horn early on and have him abuse its power, have David in on the whole racket. Just center all the interpersonal character conflict around something like the first did with Anne-Marie. And cut out the police station scene, please. It's only 7 minutes, but it drags on for so long. That's the problem with living in a post-Home Alone world. It's antics for the sake of antics. Now, All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 might differ from the first, with how safe and generally lighthearted it is, but there is one thing they share. Furry appeal, no. A distinct visual identity. The animation team brings a really cartoony sense of design to the characters and the way they move. Anyone who isn't a main character dips into that warped, exaggerated look that was gaining traction with TV cartoons around the time. David Feast, the creator of Cow and Chicken, was a supervising animator here. Haven't seen much of the show, but his style is incredibly distinct. These background characters really give it away. Across the board, every returning character has some kind of change in design. All 4 of them. I like Carface a lot. His bigger eyes and mouth give him a lot more range. They're great at making him look goofy. Annabelle is the most drastic if you really look at her. They cleaned her up while still managing to do some goofy bits of animation like the others. They don't fall into the trap of having the female characters only look pretty. Even though it's more trying to be silly rather than convey those big emotions the way the Bluth animation does. Overall, whenever the character action needs to be comedic and high energy, it really jumps out at you, more than the first. And there's a lot of really clever moments and neat little gags. The whole sequence when they go to the club and Charlie finds out he's been invisible the whole time is well done. You watch it for the first time and you think they're ignoring him, and then the realization hits. It's nice directing. For a lower budget sequel to a movie like this, it doesn't feel entirely phoned in. Just looking at it, you can infer MGM let the art team a little loose, but from what I heard, the art department just did what they could, under the direction of the script. Fellow Cow and Chicken alum Dean Taylor is credited here as the art director. You also might recognize his work on The Nightmare Before Christmas. Explains why a lot of San Francisco ends up looking like Halloween Town. This take on the city is something unique that you wouldn't really expect, especially from a film like this. The club and Red's Curio Shop are my favorites. These and a few of the other cityscapes deserve to be hung up and framed. They're great pieces on their own. Although the look of heaven is more generic, there still manages to be some spice in the way the architecture is drawn. There's a great use of color throughout that takes what the first movie did in some areas and amps it up to 11. A lot of the settings are complemented with these iridescent tones. It's really pleasant to look at. You notice it a lot when there are darker settings like the Fleabite Cafe or Alcatraz Island. Based on an old theatrical trailer I saw, I guess heaven was supposed to have this yellow sheen over everything. It's not Don Bluth, but what it is itself is really fun and out of the box, especially for a theatrical movie from around this time. That is a problem. It's not Don Bluth, and you have Don Bluth characters walking around in a Cow and Chicken Nightmare Before Christmas oil painting universe. It's gonna cause some dissonance. Backgrounds take away attention from the characters sometimes, especially when they don't draw new ones and keep zooming in on the same painting. Seeing the over-exaggerated characters for long periods of time or up close gets on my nerves after a certain point. I don't care how well he's animated, I hate this robot guy. And the difference between those human characters and the ones designed to be pleasant looking gets to you too. If you really think about it, Sasha's design is just a Minnie Mouse gender swap version of Charlie. Look at this concept art, they even look more alike. Her design has good shape language, since that's a buzzword people use now, but it clashes with Charlie and Itchy's more organic shapes. I'm really curious about this early promo where she looked more like an Afghan hound. David also looks like this. As much as I do like some of the animation, it still looks really cheap. For some context, the Ireland-based Don Bluth studio had gone under by this point. According to my sources, they struck some sort of deal where they'd produce this one at the old facility, after MGM already started on the film back in the US. What you had was a sort of skeleton crew made up of a few former Bluth employees, and some others flown out from the MGM studio in the US. I had the privilege of hearing from both Dean Taylor and Larry Scholl, the latter being a storyboard artist who worked on the film. He described it as maybe around 10 people in this big, semi-abandoned building, so you might notice some overlapping credits from the first and second. Larry Laker is noted as an assistant director, who also has credits on All Dogs 1. I found this very revealing interview with him where he brings up how MGM, to put it lightly, mishandled the film a whole lot. The budget was below standard for any sort of theatrical release, and they not only lied to him about that, but fired him around 2/3 into production.
The budget that I had been told we had, the $11 million, I took one of the accountants out for lunch, or for dinner, and we got a bit drunk, and she admitted that the budget had never been more than $8 million.
Because of said micro-budget, a big portion of the film ended up being outsourced, meaning that a lot of the final animation and coloring you see in the movie wasn't done by MGM, rather various other studios. Everybody had their hands on this movie. Filthy tramp. Overall, it's a more interesting backstory than most animated sequels pre-Pixar DreamWorks. The messiness of the production shows in the final product. Good storyboarding and wacky cartoon hijinks can't hide how rough some of the animation is. It's borderline unfinished. Look ma, no in-betweens. From the looks of it, Dogs 2 was thrown out of the studio just as it was crumbling, like firefighters rescuing a baby from a burning building. Thankfully, it sounds like a good chunk of the movie's budget went to the soundtrack, which is admittedly frickin' sweet. The score alone is better than the first, feels a lot more cinematic, and they tie in a few melodies from the different musical numbers. The musical numbers themselves? Charlie Sheen didn't provide the singing voice for Charlie, instead it's Jesse Cordy. You may know him for being the voice of LeFou in Beauty and the Beast. And while I can totally hear that character coming through during the opening number, I also can't get Brental Floss out of my head.
Straight and narrow and much too nice, like there's no way you can be a sinner. But I can't do the time. It could drive anyone bananas. Why is this game so damn adored?
And now you can't unhear it too. You're welcome. I can't really talk too much about this one song without parroting exactly what B-Mask said in his Musicals of Don Bluth video. Just know that this one's probably my favorite. Oh, I forgot about the Yodel song, that one's my favorite. I swore this was the goat from Hoodwinked, and I was so disappointed to find out it's not. As much as it comes out of nowhere, the love song between Charlie and Sasha is pretty nice.
Have touched one another.
The Easy Street song is the absolute low point in the movie for me. This is when there's some kids singing and the animators are jumping at you and shoving their hands in your face with all the gag characters. Aside from that, the animation during the musical numbers really shines. Count Me Out has a lot of fun gags from these bar patrons, and it's the best animation we ever see them do for Sasha. The real highlight, and I think the peak of the movie, is the villain song. This is where you can see everything the team has to offer firing on all cylinders. Nothing new in structure, but it's catchy and the performance is fantastic. George Hearn is going absolutely ape on the track. The animation and boarding are tons of fun. You can really see that twisted nightmare style come through in the backgrounds. I love these little skeleton guys. This is nothing like the first movie and it's all better for it. Don Bluth was not the type of guy to put the devil in his kids' movies and then make them do a campy musical number with a bunch of pratfalls and butt shots. You could only get this from All Dogs 2. Fitting how after this, the movie immediately goes downhill. All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 has some great things going for it. Fun songs, unique art direction, but it just doesn't hit the same highs as the original. The opening first half hour is a fun ride, but it gets sluggish in the middle. The entire movie is a sinkhole that falls into that police station scene. It's a weird little movie. I'm not gonna say go out of your way to watch it right now, but it's more worth your time than some others. You won't get as much out of it as you would the first, but the special things about it might make it worth checking out. I think Dogs 2 also helped MGM out a lot. In the years following, their animation division would release Nothing, and then Igor in 2008. I saw it a while ago, it was pretty fun. So in order for this to be the 2-hour All Dogs Go to Heaven video, it needs to actually be 2 hours. So in between these later reviews, I want to grab a little bit of your time to talk about some other media and weird tidbits. With a franchise like this that's kind of a big deal on home video, I wanted to take some time to look over some pretty interesting releases. Like you have your VHS, DVD reissue, and then the Blu-ray, but did you know that in 2003 you could order a pizza from Pizza Hut that comes with a DVD of All Dogs Go to Heaven 2?
With All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, dog meets dog, dog loses dog?
That doesn't happen in the movie. Physical media people are unstoppable, so of course the menu and opening for this are up on YouTube. Could you tell I have a cold right now? I don't have a cold. I don't have a cold. The trailers are standard, but included is a somewhat infamous one for this special called Hamilton Mattress, a stop-motion film about an aardvark who plays the bongos. It's not really notable in any other way, but the most exposure this film ever had in America was the DVD release for All Dogs Go to Heaven 2. Another interesting British thing, I guess, was the Daily Mail gave out or sold DVDs of the original as a Christmas film. Oh, if only they knew. I assume the trailers and menus for this release would be the same as the standard PAL DVD for the film, but since the Pizza Hut version of 2 is different from the US release, you never know. But back to strange trailers, this is a piece of lost media right here. About half a year ago, I tried to show someone All Dogs 2, watching it on their laptop. There was a VHS rip on archive.org, thankfully, but somebody edited in a bunch of trailers that were not a part of the real thing, including a trailer for the Disney film Oliver and Company that had bits from the Chipmunk Adventure spliced in and was retitled to Oliver and Company Meets Alvin and the Chipmunks. If anyone's ever heard of Who's Adventures, it was literally that. I wanted to find this again, but every version of the movie on the Internet Archive isn't the one with the trailer. According to the owner of the laptop, the link is dead. The Oliver and Company Meets Alvin and the Chipmunks fake version of this movie is nowhere to be found, and probably only 2 people were there to witness it. Also, we're like 3 for 3 on Oliver and Company mentions in the script for some reason. Modern home video and streaming releases of these movies, when they're not using promo art from 1994, have the ugliest art imaginable. In some cases like this Charlie on the Blu-ray from All Dogs 2, I don't even know how you mess up that bad. This Charlie from the DVD is fine, but his pupils are way too big and cutesy. These minimalist covers for the Tubi releases go from passable to This Charlie is cut out from the poster from 1, but in the blank space where Anne-Marie would be, they fill it in like how you patch it up with an AI. If they ever release the movies on 4K, they either need to find an interesting way to redo the theatrical posters or hire new people to make art. There are so many fans of these movies online who would jump at the chance to make official art of the characters and could do it better than whatever this is. Hire the Don Bluth FNAF artist, you cowards. This is where I'm showing my hand. All Dogs the series is what I really made this video to talk about. It's kind of a mystery the franchise was allowed to continue after the second film. The opening weekend of its theatrical release was one of the biggest animated bombs of all time. They beat Freddy as FR07. Do you understand how big of an achievement that is? Even after shifting its release to early 1996 to escape competition. However, it grossed more on home video than its predecessor. There was still money to be made, thought the higher-ups. MGM might not have had the deep pockets of Disney, Warner, or Universal, but they still saw fit to make TV shows out of whatever properties they had lying around, as was the standard practice at the time. All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series, aired in syndication starting in September of '96. After the events of 2, the series sees the valiant return of Charlie and Itchy. Here, they're sent to Earth to be guardian angels. Annabelle works her way up to main character status and dispatches the 2 on their missions. Also returning are Sasha, Carface, David, sometimes, Killer, and a whole bunch of background characters from 1 and 2 that they recycle. I theorize that being a guardian angel is Charlie's end of the bargain for returning to Earth in 2, but why is Itchy with him? The theme song does not explain it. Not only is it a random 80s sitcom type beat with non-specific lyrics about heaven and angels, but they don't even animate an intro, they use clips from 2. You can kinda see what they were going for with them splicing bits to try and explain Charlie and Itchy being sent to Earth, but those still register as movie clips. They put the text over the characters and everything like a sitcom intro. Killer's back, but there's no clips of him from 2, since he wasn't in that, and they're not gonna pull from the first movie, so they just have the most on-model shot of him they could find from the show. If they didn't have the budget to do an intro, what do you think the show looks like episode to episode?
Vacation! On vacation! On vacation!
All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series, is the gift that keeps on giving. Every single episode, there's some new bizarre decision, and nothing, I mean nothing, is consistent. Characters are completely removed from their original personalities, animation goes from passable to looking like a Captain Underpants flipbook, episode concepts are either completely nothing, stolen from some other show, or are absolutely deranged. The show is like watching 40 train wrecks in a row, and I love it. There's a great amount of charm to keep you hooked, but that can't hide the fact that this didn't need to exist. Every week, some new person up the chain of command decided they didn't care anymore, whether character designers, animators, writers, background artists, or even voice actors. You bet we're going through every episode. I believe it was a wise poet who said, "It never gets dull, it never gets old. The only thing, it gets us more bold." The first episode starts off pretty solid, as an introduction to the characters and what a typical episode might be. It's great. Charlie and Itchy are on a guardian angel mission, told to us through the voice actor saying the wrong lines.
To save a cat! We hate cats! I know, Itch.
Charlie gets distracted, they fail, and Annabelle chews him out. I have a super vague memory of watching this episode as a kid. I don't know where, when, why, but I remember Annabelle saying the thing about the milk money because that was a concept that existed at my school and it was weird to see it referenced in a cartoon.
Return kids' missing milk money. You spent it on a movie and double popcorn.
That's like 50 cents. Even in 1996, that's not going to buy you a movie and 2 popcorns. I also remember there being a character named Carface who was a bulldog and a few other vague bits of shots from this one, even though my brain Mandela affected them to be different. I think we turned it off halfway through the episode because I don't remember anything that follows. Since Charlie's messed up so many of his guardian angel missions, Annabelle puts him on probation so he can't say or do anything bad. We find out that Sasha's the new owner of the Flea Bite Club, but not for long since Carface takes it over and kicks her out.
A gentleman would never treat a lady like this.
Whoever said you were a lady?
So in order to do a good deed and get Annabelle off his case, Charlie decides to help Sasha get the flea bite back. They do this by dressing in drag and seducing Carface and Killer into signing the deed, and that's the entire second half of the episode.
Nobody moves in on my turf.
That whole thing about Charlie getting zapped when he tells a lie never comes up again, despite them setting it up like a big deal, and the whole episode being about him lying. This happens a few more times in the show. You think episodes are gonna go one way, and then halfway through they swerve into some weird other story. Way to capture the energy of the first film. The Charlie and Itchy in drag story is a weird way to execute your first episode of your cartoon show, but that storyline isn't badly done. It's handled a lot better than most other stories in the show. They have a payoff to that one gentleman line, and now Sasha works with the other two, tricking the bad guys into doing all these things. It's not genius, clever, brilliant writing, but it's something not entirely bland and predictable. The animation in this one has more put into it compared to the rest of the show. There's a good amount of in-betweens and some well-done cartoony slapstick and expressions. I don't think we needed a tango number sung by Ernest Borgnine about wanting to make babies with your cross-dressing arch-nemesis.
These girls are guys! And these girls who are guys!
But they do add some bounciness to the song sequence. I would theorize that the differences here mean that this was some kind of pilot they used to sell the show. Would theorize, because the first batch of episodes generally has a different look than what would come later. Another reason might be they were outsourced to different studios. Steven Weber takes over as the voice of Charlie, who sounds nothing like Burt Reynolds, but a teeny tiny bit like Charlie Sheen, and even then the difference is astounding.
I'm not his angel. I'm just an errand boy sent to fetch Gabriel's horn.
Yeah, come in, Itch. Did you ever hear of fast food? Annabelle, it wasn't my fault.
He sounds like an entirely different character. He does good at playing a funny cartoon guy, but that's the problem. His voice dips into, whoa, hey, what's going on? Too much.
It's because you kissed him! If you just listen!
Imagine Spencer from iCarly trying to do Krusty the Clown. I like that they didn't even give him a separate singing voice. He can do the songs fine, but he's not the LeFou guy.
Don't give it all away to start.
Dom DeLuise returns yet again for Itchy, and you can make some joke about how he's stooping to such a low level doing the show, but he still brings some of that energy to the role he does in the movies that I think a random cartoon voice actor wouldn't really capture. A touch I like is sometimes when Itchy gets upset, he whines like a dog would.
If you had just given them a chance.
You can tell he's putting some thought in. Plus, they're giving him work. If he gets to pay off his house or his grandkids get to go to college, great. Everybody else from 2 is back. Post-sequel Carface is such a fun character, even though he's nothing like his original counterpart. He and Killer aren't recording in the same booth like the original, but the energy that both their voice actors have together is great. Charles Nelson Riley, who surprisingly returns, is still a goober, and Ernest Borgnine actually has such a great range as Carface. He can act in a way you believe would be intimidating or charming to the other characters, but he also plays them like a total loser sometimes. He's at his best in this show. Sheena Easton is Girl. She was Sasha in 2 also. Bebe Neuwirth returns from 2 to play Annabelle. For some reason in 2, she sounded fine, but in this, her voice is pushed all the way up to be really shrill and nasally.
I'll take the horn from here, Charles. Who proves that every dog deserves a second chance?
Well, your saintly friend has a mission for you too.
While we're also touring the sound department, we get a really good sampling of the stock music they use in the show. Some tracks actually sound specific to this one episode, like they scored it instead of selecting random canned tracks. So that's my whole pilot theory. Why couldn't the rest of the show be like this? I didn't realize this at the time. It was pointed out to me in a Mars Girl video, but they lean way too heavily into the cartoon sound effects. Whenever anything happens, you hear some kind of whiz or splat or Hanna-Barbera style bonk, combined with some of these music cues like the wah-wah trumpet and the wah-wah violin. Thanks, Mars Girl.
And then you broke!
The doggone truth gives us the standard for what the tone of the show is. Telling jokes is one of their bigger priorities this time around. Stories aren't entirely gag-based, but the ones they tell in each episode are meant to put the characters in silly hijinks. There aren't many things, especially later on, that are treated with any serious weight. First episode involving some kind of vehicular action. Expect that to be 90% of the climaxes. In a very special episode, Annabelle replaces Itchy for a bit after Charlie and him have an argument.
We'd starve, short legs.
Charles!
Your big appetite.
Oh, for heaven's sake, quiet! Stop fighting!
They go on a mission to help a kid who doesn't like dogs reconnect with his family by turning him into a dog with magic, and then they run around for a bit. It's a pretty Annabelle-centric episode. There's a lot of yelling from her and that voice, and a lot of weird noises. Right from the start, it's important to show all of you how shoddy the animation can get. Staying on model, lip-syncing the dialogue.
Yeah, if it was up to you.
Coloring the cells correctly, all merely suggestions. The fact that this aired in the late 90s makes it even worse. This has the quality of a mid-80s toy commercial cartoon and looks subpar compared to almost anything else coming out at the time. This is the first episode to introduce the Miracle Dog tag that Annabelle gives out to Charlie and Itchy.
I hope you remember to bring a miracle.
Got it right here.
They can do pretty much anything. They don't give these a consistent design. Sometimes they're stars and other times they're little medals. Sometimes they're actual dog tags. A new angel is sent to San Francisco to work with Charlie and Itchy, but he's perfect and Charlie gets jealous because Itchy starts looking up to him instead, or he thinks he's gonna take their angel job or something. Itchy acts like a child in this one, the way he looks up to Lance. In the show, they reduce him to a nice, good-natured dumb guy a lot, and it doesn't line up with his characterization from the movies. If anything, it was Charlie who was slightly more absent-minded. He just happened to be in charge. That's weird because it feels like the writer for this one might have watched the first movie.
How really bad you were before you died! Save Burt Reynolds from his hairpiece.
Speaking of the first movie, guess which classic big-lipped character returns? Otto. You don't remember Otto. What they did was take one of Carface's random thugs from the original and made him into his own character. He comes complete with motorcycle and really bad German accent.
You wander into my alley and then you try to apologize to me.
They make him into a recurring character, but he's in the B tier. He's up with like Gerda, the bartender. And if you're asking, they don't explain why Otto made the time jump from the 1930s to the 1990s, and from New Orleans to San Francisco. Nor do they explain how Killer made the time jump either. They also don't really explain why Carface is back on Earth, even though he got dragged to hell at the end of 2. Even though Lance is a big, strong guy, he, for whatever reason, doesn't know how to fight back when people try to beat him up, so Charlie has to save the day. He and Itchy walk off into the sunset, and our love triangle is no more.
Anybody could get less popular than Stinky and me. Come on, Stinky!
On a more serious note, it was a missed opportunity not making him a recurring character. There were probably a few more stories you could have told with him. Have him interact with Sasha or Carface, even some of the new show-exclusive characters. See what that would have been like in an episode. There's a lot of potential they didn't tap into having him and Charlie be near opposites. The next 2 episodes we're going to talk about are really similar. I wouldn't be surprised if they were some of the first produced. This one specifically looks like it could have been an earlier pilot. There are a few differences in characters' design and color schemes, plus some bits of uncharacteristically good animation, though other parts are really rough, like a lot of uncolored cells and this part where the puppy's walk cycle glitches back and forth. Even the story, it feels like a pitch for the average episode. Sasha comes in and leaves, and there's no flavor to her dialogue other than, "Charlie, I don't like you. Charlie, I like you. Charlie, I don't like you again." She sounds like a robot, or a talking sexy lamp that Charlie hallucinates.
Oh, Sasha just loves little puppies. Yeah!
This dog catcher character returns from field trip. I think they were gonna try and make him a recurring character, but in later episodes, they just use different random dog catchers. Usually shows start out vague and then build up an identity and recurring cast. Here they do the opposite. Like Doggone Truth, this one shows some promise for what a better version of the show could be, but it's closer to the final product. Maple-flavored Charlie returns, and there are a few fluid-ish moments, but the animation doesn't have as much punch as what came before. This had to have been a part of the regular episode order for the season, but maybe something changed and they had to make the rest of it cheaper. Carface and Killer get a few scenes on their own, not a full B-plot, but it cuts around more than you'd expect. Puppy Sitter had that too, the way they'd cut between Sasha and Charlie, and then Itchy during the second act. Sasha herself looks a lot like she did in that. I'm digging the angular design they give Carface. It's also a pretty funny episode.
Could we get some milk in here? Hello? Meow!
I feel like the writers were trying to actually capture some kind of friendship between the characters. As much as I enjoyed this episode, I can't bring this one up without talking about the super obvious plagiarism going on here. Before my time, back in the olden days of yore, before we had running water or electricity or indoor plumbing, Warner Brothers did a show called Tiny Toon Adventures. I'm not going to explain what the premise was, I want you to take a look at it and guess. Their version of Elmer Fudd was admittedly a pretty clever idea, being reimagined as this little girl who smothers her pet so much that it puts them in physical pain. In fact, the people at WB thought it was such a good idea that they put her in everything, and the writer of this episode liked this character so much too, that they ripped it off and put her in the show. It's the exact same design and personality, except without the good animation or voice performance, also with black hair, so she looks like Anne-Marie. Great. Comparing these two designs specifically, you can see just how far we've fallen. I think we actually just got out of the valley. But the human designs here aren't anything special. Closer to the second movie than the first, obviously, but the style is a bit all over the place. Most of these kids look like restaurant mascots you'd see on a children's placemat. They all exist in this vaguely Nelvana-esque sphere of 90s cartoon human design. I'm explaining to you what Tiny Toons is, but I expect you to understand what I mean by that, because clearly everybody here has watched the My Pet Monster cartoon. Here we go again, back to low budget land. They didn't have the resources to draw this character kissing Charlie, so they just superimposed a heart over her face. What a Chad move. I think this might be our first episode that starts with Charlie and Itchy looking for food, and our third involving some kind of vehicular accident as a plot point, both out of many. Itchy likes this girl dog best, but doesn't know how to tell her. Charlie tries to help his friend riz up the 10 out of 10 yacht, but it ends up making things a little more complicated than they need to be. Charlie helps Itchy out with all the smooth talking, but Bess ends up thinking that it's Charlie who actually likes her, and Itchy is a wingman. Of course, they set everything straight, and Itchy and Bess get together in the end. This episode's idea of what a relationship is like ends up making for a pretty cringe-worthy storyline. Itchy just says some mushy stuff to her, and she instantly falls for him and dumps her evil Chad boyfriend. Bess and said Chad, Manfred, are played by Tress MacNeille and Kevin Michael Richardson, respectively. It's fun to hear these veteran voice actors in obscure roles.
Do you mind, Manfred? I'm talking to my friend, Itchy.
Itchy, huh?
I think D. Bradley Baker does a few unnamed background roles too. I definitely also know Clancy Brown is in a few of these, and some of the kid characters are actually played by a very young Ashley Tisdale. Our two guest stars here do show up again, both the actors and the characters. Manfred shares a design with some random extra, and it's surreal to see this known antagonist character as a rando in the background. Bess's design is so weird. One of the worst examples of make sure they know it's the girl one. What's worse is that she's a Cocker Spaniel apparently. She looks more like some weird squirrel Pokemon. As much as I clown on this show, there are so many episodes I've watched on my own voluntarily, but I've never seen this one start to finish. This episode sees the return of David. Even though he's in detention, Charlie and Itchy decide to break him out and celebrate his birthday. Half the episode runtime is antics, but there are some nice fluid bits again. I might have misjudged the animation quality. The early episodes are kind of okay. I'm actually surprised they got away with a lot of the activities here. They don't get up to anything raunchy, but there are so many horrible, dangerous things that kids could imitate. In a cartoon like this that doesn't take many chances, you'd expect them to avoid stuff like that. The Charlie and David dynamic here scratches the surface of something I think could be really fun. Charlie acting like an irresponsible uncle or divorced dad. It doesn't end up being that here, more mischievous dog.
Mischievous dog.
But the bit at the beginning when he tries to get them to skip school just reminds me of that, and I like it. Charlie canonically has the same backstory as Chuck E. Cheese. He grew up on the streets and thus doesn't know when his birthday is.
I grew up on the street, Itch, and I never knew my mom mom or dad, and I don't know when I was born.
Maybe instead of setting up a gambling empire, he could have had a good thing going with the Children's Entertainment Center. Also, ignore that part in 2 where he said he ran away from home.
You know, I ran away from home when I was little.
That make your parents sorry?
I never saw him after that.
Never knew my mom or dad, and well...
Dogs can be quite mischievous.
Carface steals Itchy's heavenly collar, which we never see him wear, so now he and Charlie try to get it back. Hijinks ensue.
I got it. Good. I meant to do that.
The episode swerves into this plot about Charlie getting jealous over Sasha, and the whole thing erupts at the end. The third act is all the characters yelling at each other, and then Carface gets caught in the Ass Clapper 5000, and everyone looks on intently. Carface and Killer are now in charge of this curio shop from 2, but do humans come in here? Is it a shop just for dogs? The flea bite makes sense, because that's in an alley, but this is a building. What would happen if a human walked in here and there were 2 dogs trying to sell him stuff? This is the body swap episode. It's not the most original premise already, and they don't do anything unique with it. Charlie and Itchy keep arguing about keeping their apartment clean, so Annabelle swaps them, and uh-oh, Sasha and Bess plan a double date, so now they have to act like each other. It follows the beats you'd expect. The characters react to being switched, then have to perform some task or something in each other's bodies. Animation is on the lower end, and I really don't like that they drew Bess with big brown pupils. Looks gross. I like what they do with Itchy being a neat freak and Charlie wanting to lie around. It's what you do in this kind of episode, but it reminds me of old Itchy. This gag with Charlie swiping food from people at the cafe was cute, and the little bit at the end with Sasha and Bess was kind of funny, where they don't realize their boyfriends were swapped this whole time. The story forgets what it's about really after the body swap section. They get switched back after an encounter with Otto, but it doesn't tie into anything else that was set up other than, hey, friends are good. Setting up Charlie and Itchy working as a team earlier in the episode, or ending with them compromising about the apartment would have made it more satisfying. So much of these episodes feel like they were written in a game of telephone. One person did the first half and the second person had a completely different idea. I can't look at Itchy with his stupid hairnet. Why do these people keep thinking those are his hair? Charlie wants money, so for whatever reason, he and Itchy take over the flea bite while Sasha is away. Charlie makes a deal with Carface, for whatever reason, and he manages to seize control of the place. But don't worry, friends, Charlie and Itchy stage a pie fight to get the place back. Biggest takeaway is how buddy-buddy Charlie and Carface are. They're not friends, but they tolerate each other way more than you think they would after everything that's happened. It's like the trope where the bully character is part of the main cast, but instead of a bully, it's the guy who tried to kill him multiple times. Charlie and Carface used to be friends in the first movie, so it kinda makes sense, but I don't think the people writing the show cared to watch the original. They also reference Where's the Beef in the show twice, this being the first time.
Where's the beef? Now hear this. Where's the beef?
When was that a thing? What year was that? Where's the beef? What year? 1984? Well, at least it was Wendy's in the 80s. That's kind of esoteric. Charlie seems to be getting all the attention at the clam that day, but when Itchy gets picked to be the mascot for a dog food company, things are flipped upside down. Itchy realizes that being a slave to the capitalist machine is bad, and Charlie admits to lying about breaking out of the pound and all the stories he tells, except for the one time that happened. The sense of humor in this one feels pretty different from the rest of the show. This feels like Charlie and Itchy walked into an episode of Animaniacs with all these jokes about the media and this weird Conan O'Brien caricature. Wow, stealing from Warner Brothers again. What's next? Oh, you wait, you put a pin in that. Strange piece of All Dogs Go to Heaven lore. Doom 2 is canon to this franchise. Not the original, but Doom 2.
I just got the high score on Doom 2!
This joke is actually pretty good just for how random it is.
With no hope of survival. And on a lighter note,
Charlie and Itchy help a kid voiced by an actual kid.
Alright!
Since Itchy's completed enough missions, he can go back to heaven, but Charlie doesn't want him to because he misses his friend. There's a scene I like where they play this emotional music, and from it you can tell that they try to do something with these characters, but since this is an episodic TV cartoon, they go back on it at the end. They act like Charlie and Itchy are specifically David's guardian angels, which is weird because that's a lie he made up in the film.
When Annabelle first sent you to Earth to help David. I came along because you needed me.
I'm gonna infer this in-universe as a character making things up or forgetting, but looking at the show as a whole, from some of these episodes and the way they handle certain things, you can kind of reverse engineer the show Bible the writers had to work with. I think they did have some guide with these weird incomplete summaries of the characters somewhere, like how Carface is a business guy and Charlie in this incarnation is not, or the whole thing with David. I really hope that exists somewhere. Lost Media 2024, All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series Pitch Bible. Season 1 ends with a bang. While not finale material, The Perfect Dog is the exact kind of thing I want out of a show like this. I love when supposedly wholesome shows or movies have characters be unexpectedly, unapologetically horrible to each other. It's a niche that I need more out of. Charlie gets rejected by Sasha because she's looking for the perfect guy. Charlie tries to show her why that's bad by acting like said perfect guy and making her life miserable. She catches on and sends him off on a wild goose chase, eventually pushing him so far that he gives up the bit.
It's like being stalked by the kindness fairy.
It's the most emotion we ever see from Sasha in this whole show, and the most we ever see at all from Gerda. I was gonna use this time to complain about how they don't develop Sasha's character too much beyond making her Charlie's love interest, but let's be fair, that's the case with the male side characters too. Unfortunately, in a lot of her appearances, it does devolve into her being the token girl character, the object of affection and or voice of reason. Lucky for Sasha, her VA is one of the only principal cast members who can sing. Whenever they go out of her way to give her a song, they end up being some of the best, because it doesn't feel like they're writing around someone with less range. Song at the beginning here is chintzy, but it escalates in a fun way.
You would be quite the gentle hound, a more sentimental hound, less of a flake.
There's no such creature.
The only perfect dog is in an animated feature.
Please, kid, we've been good. She can sing, but for whatever reason, they didn't bother to have her yell here.
Not if you were the last dog on Earth.
What were those glasses made of? Overall, this one has a lot of great out-of-context moments you can clip. Is it the best of season 1? No, but it has some of my favorite individual bits. The ending is a little sweet too, even though it implies Sasha forgives Charlie after all this. Also some nice expressions from Itchy. More computer games, yay! I really wish there was a horrible licensed platformer for the Game Boy Color or PlayStation, but MGM didn't have that kind of money. Not for Charlie and the gang. All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 and the TV series, I guess, had tie-ins in the form of computer games. All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 animated movie book is a kind of thing where it reads through a story with minigames and clickables throughout. The game retells the story of 2. It doesn't commit to the book format that these things usually do, and every scene they end up playing a corresponding movie clip. Don't know how that's supposed to make your kid more literate. Disney did a lot of these under the animated storybook title, and of course, this kind of software was put out by several different companies around the time. Same case with the Activity Center, another staple of 90s kids software that it seems MGM was trying to ape Disney by doing. Even growing up in the late 2000s, I remember some of these distinctly. There was one with the Cars characters, and another with Mickey Mouse at a gas station. Dude, memories. Wow, oh my gosh. Even with the little kiddie game, the budget discrepancy between MGM Interactive and Disney is very noticeable. They couldn't even license the songs from the movies or get any voice actors.
Carface here. Can you find this stuff for me?
There's coloring, simple minigames, clickables, public domain Warner Brothers cartoons it looks like. Full disclosure, I didn't play either of these. As fun as it would be to color Sasha, I don't feel like jumping through all the hoops trying to get these running on a newer Mac. The 90s All Dogs games add to that statement I made about 2, it being the most 90s movie ever. These are so emblematic of the decade and give off this lonely liminal feeling that I only get from seeing obvious remnants of the past. Old malls, houses with that wood paneling, old posters they had up, or those dated 90s tapes they showed us in school. That's honestly how I felt watching 2 for the first time, especially around the third act when they're on the docks. Season 1 has them trying their best to adapt the story and characters from the movie into an episodic comedy. A few episodes work well within the premise that the writers were given to work with, however, some dip into being cliche. There's only so much you can do with dogs running around the city going on the typical dog ventures. My impression was that most of the show would follow the main 2 going on missions, but they don't stress that part of it as much as you'd think. When they do, they have a lot of restraint with what angelic missions they go on, and what kind of shenanigans come about from Annabelle's holy powers. Some episodes show promise in the way they're able to put the characters into half-hour stories that deliver some kind of effective comedy or character drama. Nothing on the level of their theatrical outings, but something that could be its own fun little show. The animation, as sluggish as it can be, has some good moments. They don't continue in that direction. Future episodes rely on gimmicks a lot more, or formulaic stories. The animation quality also takes a bit of a nosedive. Going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if they cut the budget in some way. A possible reason for Season 1 generally being better drawn might be the contributions of cartoonist Jim Wheelock. You can't find much about his work at a glance, but he has storyboarding credits on Season 1 of the show and only Season 1. IMDb also lists him working on Street Fighter the Animated Series and Galaxy Rangers. A lot of independent comics and other projects too, very eclectic body of work. While researching, I found out that he has a GoFundMe for various living expenses, and I encourage everyone watching this to donate if you can. If I'm right, it's his work on the show that made the look of this season as special as it was. Okay, so you would expect this show, as measly as I'm making it out to be, wouldn't have that much relevance. But what if I told you? One of the most iconic characters in this entire franchise makes their debut in this episode.
What if it was purple? Let's see it purple.
Belladonna is Annabelle's diabolical cousin from the other side. There's something that feels so out of place having a color-swapped evil version of a main character. It doesn't feel like it belongs in this franchise, save that for the Fairly Odd Parents. I don't know if it's her punk getup or the fact that she and Annabelle are fun parallels of each other, but there's a ton of fan art of either her or them together, a lot of them as mermaids for some reason. I would like to know why. It's not a fetish, believe you me, I have a sixth sense about that kind of thing. Belladonna pretends to be Annabelle and tricks Charlie and Itchy into going to this meatpacking plant. She, Carface, and Killer have taken over the place and convinced Charlie to join them. Easy is this episode's buzzword.
I want something less ridiculous and way more easy.
Easy, the easiest way. Easy.
Easy.
Charlie doesn't want to dress up like a clown for his food and wants an easy way out. Belladonna sees she could use this to turn him to the dark side, to mess with the pink one, and now Charlie needs to learn an incredibly obvious moral about how stealing is wrong. This episode is one of the most preachy. You watch this and half expect them to start citing Bible verses at you. The funny thing is, I have vague memories of scenes from this one when I was younger, so I wouldn't be surprised if we thought it was a Sunday school cartoon and turned it off. The messaging in this one is just that heavy-handed. They even sing a song about it, featuring a Hot Wheels guitar and ew. I don't like all this that's going on. The song itself is fine, but the hook sounds way too much like the theme from Little Shop of Horrors. Both Whippets are voiced by the same person. She's able to sing as Belladonna, but Annabelle is rough.
Barley B, I can plainly see, being good rubs your further wrong way. Your conscience is your best friend.
Funny trade-off, Annabelle's design is arguably more pleasant looking in the sequels. Her voice goes from milk and honey to the scraps that get left in the kitchen sink drain. Oh, they could never make me hate you.
Penis.
Belladonna's existence might be to save time on making new model sheets, but I think another part of it was not wanting to have Red show up again to be the big bad, either because they couldn't find a voice actor or they didn't want to put the devil in their daytime television kiddie show. You could only do that on Cartoon Network. Wait a minute, Cow and Chicken? No. David Feast interview. Red Devil character. There's connections here. How to waste 22 minutes of your life, this episode. Charlie is sick of doing missions for Annabelle and wants to go on a vacation. He and Itchy then wander around San Francisco, getting into typical hijinks, saving people along the way. That's the opposite of what Charlie wants, but at the end, Itchy tells him that that was the new mission Annabelle sent them on.
She wanted us to just wander around the city and help anyone who needed us.
Absolutely nothing happens. Everything feels like amalgamated scenes from other episodes. I guess the comedy is supposed to drive this one. They try and give the main two some witty banter, but it can't change the fact that just like the main characters, this episode is incredibly meandering. There are some bizarre bits of animation, like their vacation dance or the magically multiplying backpack. Itchy makes some gumbo for Charlie in the beginning, which I like to think is a reference to the New Orleans setting of the first film, but I won't count on it. Having just watched that again while returning to the script, the interactions between these two are night and day. Charlie is a bigot who hates cats because they're different.
I still don't know why cats are so bad.
Well, because cats are, different than us.
To get across another bland lesson, Annabelle puts them in charge of a kitten. After losing him, they have to use a miracle dog tag to turn into cats and get it back.
Ugh, this is so creepy.
Charlie and Itchy realize that being a different race gives you many physical advantages, and they see that cats aren't that bad. I think after last season, they realized that they needed to start putting morals into the show instead of whatever this was.
Don't move, my peach. I see a flea.
Instead of falling into the usual dog tropes for an episode like fire hydrants, this one falls into a bunch of cat tropes. The one part that's accurate is when they take care of the kitten, because cats really do scratch you for no reason. There's a Siamese cat who shows up, and you know she's a Siamese cat because they play a gong whenever she talks.
Sorry.
David finds a magic box in some alley and takes it home to practice his magic act. The magic box can multiply people, which is great because Charlie really needs to be in 3 places at once. Otto wants to pound him, his gambling buddies set up a game that afternoon, and Sasha plans a romantic lunch. This is one of the few episodes where they write it like the two are in a relationship. Whenever that's the case, he treats her like dirt. Each time, they go out of their way to have Sasha remark about how weird it is that she likes him.
Sometimes I wonder what I see in that big mangy lug.
Every other episode, he's chasing her, desperately trying to get with her, but when we see them in a relationship, he's blowing her off. What an amazing character.
I am a no-good, dirty dog.
I'm Dirty Dog, and I'm the baddest there is. My coronavirus rhyme are the best.
I guess in order to make their relationship work, they make Sasha really oblivious in this one.
Boy, I'm calling the vet. I gotta get my ears checked.
The way the magic box works makes no sense. It multiplies people like you'd expect, but for some reason when Charlie goes in, it splits into these 3 versions based on his personality. So there's a romantic, a tough guy, and Son of the Mask. Otto is inexplicably a character in these last few episodes. I like the joke where he can't count to 4, but it would have been more charming with better animation. At first, I thought he was played by D. Bradley Baker, which would have been amazing since Klaus from American Dad would have been in the show, but no, he's played by Mr. Crocker. For as many SpongeBob people there are in this show, it's weird to see a main player from Fairly OddParents here too. So many Nickelodeon connections. Itchy's sick and out of commission, but Charlie has to go help David's friend from school. Hope you don't like David, because he doesn't show up again until season 3. Sasha offers to tag along, but we see Charlie being a bigot yet again who thinks women belong in the kitchen.
Girly stuff like baking cakes and looking pretty.
He's also a bit of a gooner.
Hey, hello, baby.
The rest of the episode is some usual all dogs of the series hijinks, but instead we have Charlie and Sasha bickering with each other the whole time over who is more capable.
That's nuts. Why would anyone choose to be a girl?
It was a joke early on, but this can't be a coincidence. Good for her. It's a lot like the cat one, where the points they make about their differences are really basic.
We're even more maturer than girls.
Are not.
Are to infinity.
Are not.
But they're only arguing about it here. Charlie doesn't live as a woman or anything. The trans episode of All Dogs Go to Heaven. Charlie getting trapped in the trash compactor is a scary thought, but won't he get sent back to heaven and have Annabelle put him back on Earth? For all the times in this series the characters are in mortal peril, they never explain that. At the end they act like Sasha's gonna be part of the main team now, but we know that's not true. I was glad we get an episode without Charlie and Itchy as the central characters, but don't expect many more like this. Bess happens to be at the carnival the same time as our duo and wants to have a romantic ride on the Ferris wheel with Itchy. One problem, he's scared of heights. He walks into a hypnotist booth which gets rid of his fear, but there's a twist. Every time Itchy hears the word chicken, he starts believing he's a superhero. I don't know how those two things are correlated, but it leads to another one of those funny TV bits. Those are the only times I feel like the writers are having a lot of fun.
And if it weren't for that dog, my VCR would still be flashing 12 o'clock.
There was some Scooby-Doo movie where the same thing happened to Shaggy. Both even had the same gag where they say the trigger word and he goes back and forth in the background.
You sure you don't want some of this chicken?
Everyone's use of the word chicken in this episode is so contrived.
Tasty grilled chicken! Grilled chicken!
I don't know why they're selling plain grilled chicken at a carnival and not bacon-wrapped Oreos or whatever. Spaghetti 2, is that just like a West Coast thing? Charlie and Bess find out what's going on and try to find the hypnotist again. Uh-oh, looks like Manfred is back. He kidnaps Bess and traps her on the Ferris wheel. Itchy has to save her without the help of his superhero persona, and is thusly cured of his fear. This one is refreshing for whatever reason. Maybe it's the setting, maybe because it's primarily an Itchy and Bess episode. Whoever was voicing the hypnotist was completely out there. I liked him.
Have convinced
Kyle? This man! To hold my tarantula!
This face from Charlie when he takes his glasses is also a really good rare character expression. So Lance is a movie star now, I guess. Despite the last episode being about Itchy conquering his fears, this episode's inciting incident has Itchy being scared. That's not like a massive criticism. I do need to remember that this is an episodic show. Charlie wants to take him camping so he can get in touch with his natural wolf instincts. Sure. Since this is a pre-9/11 world, two dogs can just walk into an airport and pass TSA. They end up stranded in the middle of the woods, and it's not a fun time for either. Cut to this Girl Scout who keeps trying to prove herself.
Buffalo Girl's handbook says you're supposed to put the weenies on the long ways so that the thermal energy gets distributed evenly along the vertical axis of the dog.
Oh yeah, so they can fall through the grill and onto the charcoal. She gets lost too and meets up with our doggy heroes. Now all three of them have to survive in the wilderness. Charlie and the kid keep on arguing. Good to know he's on the level of a little girl now. They get chased by a mountain lion, but all end up okay. Again, I assume that Charlie and Itchy would be helping kids like this a lot more. I'm very glad it ended up not being so, because those parts of the episodes are the least interesting. The backgrounds in this one are pretty good. You can tell whoever was doing these was really good at painting trees. Everybody down at the Clam is playing this new board game called Kibble Land. Belladonna, in her second appearance, finds out that Charlie is a bad sport. She has Carface and Killer give them some enchanted pieces that suck them into the world of the game. I think it goes without saying, but yeah, this is Jumanji, but a dog version. I originally didn't want to draw attention to it because it's not one-to-one with the book or movie, since they go inside the game, but come on, they had to be inspired by it. There was a Jumanji cartoon that aired around the same time, where the premise was that they go into the game, but that's just lucky. Both started airing in 1996. It's not like the Elmira thing, or whatever's going on with this season's penultimate episode. Maybe two people can look at this and figure out what I'm going to be talking about. Tangent, but when I was a kid watching that show, I always thought they were going to explain what that skeleton guy's deal was. He just kind of showed up. Not sure why they'd accept board game pieces that happen to look like them, and from Carface of all people. Belladonna seems to be Carface and Killer's boss. You can infer that this might be what happened to Carface after 2. Once his soul got by hell, he has to serve them, just like how Charlie and Itchy work for heaven. This one is a whole fantasy epic. Every single main dog character gets involved. I appreciate that they tried to do something on a large scale for this episode, even if the set pieces inside the board game are nothing but dumb dog jokes. Selfish is the word of the week.
Selfish. Selfish only thinks about himself. Self-oriented.
Doing that again.
Selfish.
Charlie keeps screwing everybody else over, but completely by accident, saves the other two in the end, so they all win the game and Belladonna is left seething. I know I'm the biggest Charlie hater right now, but I can't believe he keeps bragging in this episode about how good he is at a board game. About a Candyland tier children's board game. It's like trying to make a career out of how fast you can beat Mario. I think the word Rex is said once in this episode. I have no idea why it's named that. Itchy keeps watching this Unsolved Alien Mysteries TV show, and is thus freaked out at the prospect of an alien invasion. Charlie pranks him to make him see aliens aren't real, but then Charlie is the one who starts seeing UFOs himself. He's freaking out, and the Blues Brother dogs are here to sing the worst song in this entire franchise.
Charlie's losing his grip on reality.
I don't understand why it's an 80s techno song sung by these characters, and why whatever is happening on screen is happening. It makes for some great clips out of context. Carface and Killer exploit Charlie's newfound paranoia to get this jewel he and Itchy have been guarding for Annabelle. At the end, he tricks the two baddies into getting caught by the Alien TV show, bookending the episode in a pretty fun way. This was the same writer as the Doom 2 one. With that TV show, we also get some more of the reporter guy. Always good to see him. I think he's voiced by the coming soon to Disney DVD guy.
We'll give them a thorough examination back at the studio.
Annabelle is drawn unusually well in this one. This pose right here is traced from the one piece of stock art MGM has of her, which itself is based off this reference sheet from the original film, but she's more on model than usual. This face from Charlie is also good. Wouldn't be surprised if that was referenced from one of the films. This episode ends with them showing aliens are real. Aliens are now canon to the All Dogs Go to Heaven universe. And they're in league with heaven somehow, I just realized.
It's enemy territory monster that we have heard stories about since we were...
Actually, Charlie and Itchy are palling around, but then get stuck in the vicinity of Mr. Krabs, the dog catcher.
Are you traveling alone, or are you traveling with a friend?
You can't do this to me. I'm JC Tiger!
Itchy gets taken and teams up with Killer of all people to break free. To my memory, there is vehicular hijinks in this episode. Also a really chill rat, this guy's cool. It's a unique choice to highlight Killer, they even give him a song. It isn't that memorable, but it's good that they let his VA actually sing, seeing as how Charles Nelson Reilly has notable experience on both stage and screen. The whole thing ends with a breakout from the Pound, echoing the police station bit from 2, and an episode of Beethoven the Animated Series, which you now know exists. Speaking of SpongeBob connections...
Hey guys, I found it! I found it! A victim!
And full circle, Tress MacNeille also plays a main character in that too. In this episode about how lying is bad, I'm surprised they didn't do the typical small lie grows into a big lie plot. I'm past complaining about cartoon plots being cliche, but I doubt they would have broken new ground with it. Charlie keeps lying to everyone in order to get out of his responsibilities. He even misuses a miracle dog tag so he can hear the dog catcher's radio, always with the dog catcher. This is when Annabelle's had enough. There's no other word for it. She curses him so that whenever he lies, his nose will grow, giving him another thing to lie about, making the problem worse. It all ends in this disgusting climax where he's spewing so much nonsense that every part of his body expands. I don't want to look at this. Itchy and Sasha are written to be super oblivious to everything going on. Second case where Charlie and Sasha are in a relationship, yet Charlie can't be bothered to do anything for her.
Yeah, sure. Good luck, Charlie.
Like the TV show. Charlie wants to pretend to be a detective. Listen to that. Pretend. Annabelle and Itchy disapprove of this, acting like admiring some fictional dog detective means Charlie is losing his grip on his identity.
Well, I like you better as plain old Charlie anyway. You should always be yourself.
Before Charlie can call them out for overreacting, he gets knocked out and has a dream about being a 1940s gumshoe. Fun fact, if you remember, that was the original idea from the mid-80s for the movie. Either they pulled from that, or they stole it from something else. Conspiracy. Remember that pin from the Elmira episode? Well, let's take that out. Tiny Toon Adventures aired on Fox Kids. You know what else aired on Fox Kids?
The Exciting Adventures of Ace-Haired Private Eye Scooch. I don't know how you do it. And Elliot Shag. That's me. The incredible canine cartoonist who created Ace.
Together, Ace and I keep Dog City from going to the dogs. I'm taking the kicks. Don't miss the fun on Jim Henson's Dog City, Saturday mornings on Fox.
Dog City. A show starring a German Shepherd as a detective with a bulldog as the main villain, set in a dog pun-based setting where they insert dog things into a 1940s film noir parody where they eat and drink out of bowls and use rolled-up newspapers as weapons. Bonus point, there's a character whose name is a pun on Sam Spade from the Maltese Falcon. The show employs a lot of fast-paced, self-referential, and absurdist humor, just like this episode happens to do in contrast to most others.
There were no explosives on that carriage.
Yeah, I know, but it looks good on screen.
Thanks. I could also use a client.
Yeah, Mr. Hart, you're hired.
This story is getting better and better.
The noir parody is also set within some kind of framing device where characters from the real world are transposed onto the fake detective story. Boom. Okay, I'm not going to say that this is without a doubt true, that they co-opted an entire show's premise for this episode. Noir parodies are a common thing to do in kids shows. Rugrats had one, SpongeBob, Adventure Time, the new Fairly OddParents did one. That's just off the top of my head. Got a whole TV tropes page. Second, a dog detective isn't a new idea. It's been done in some capacity both before and since, even with Charlie Sheen. Also, most likely a coincidence the species of the main characters line up. Third off, and this is a weak point because of course they're not going to be the exact same, there are choices they make that are unique to this episode. The plot about dog-cat relations is new. While there are believable analogs to some main characters, that doesn't account for Killer, Sasha, or Belladonna, who are more based around noir tropes than anything. On the Dog City side, you're missing Rosie, Police Chief Rosie O'Gravy. Do you ever get upset because you know a fictional character would be incredibly out of your league if they were real? As an episode, it's pretty standard. The meta jokes feel a little out of place. They cast Itchy as 3 different characters, and the plot about cats taking over the city has nothing to do with anything. The song is well done, but the lyrics about being yourself are too babyish.
Be original as your paw print.
I think they wanted to do the noir parody, but then realized they needed to tie it into something, so they added the moral at the start and end. If they wanted to do the detective thing with the being yourself plot, they should have had Charlie have to solve some mystery, but then realize he's not cut out for it, and then the real Sam Spade dog comes into the real world via a miracle dog tag or something. Have Charlie take the role of another character, and then he learns what they go through, instead of from the start acting like him. I need to add this. There is an episode of Dog City that has a scene of the main character falling down into a sewer with a big-lipped alligator who clearly wants him. I don't know what to make of that. Welcome to the future. This episode was colored using digital ink and paint, which explains why the colors on the characters are more vivid than usual. Despite the technology existing pre-90s, a lot of cartoons around this time were switching from traditional cell animation to doing it on a computer. 1997 would have been relatively early for a TV cartoon to make the jump. The newness of the technology combined with the low budget ends up looking not great. Characters will sometimes have these weird artifacts around them, and the outlines end up looking lighter than they usually should be. Whenever there's a walk cycle or camera movement, it ends up looking wrong. I think that might be because of the different frame rates between the actual animation and the computer software. The backgrounds are really dark. I like to think that was somehow related to the tech in some way. Charlie and Itchy are shrunken down to help a colony of mice who have taken up residence in the flea bite. Their home is being polluted by Carface, who uses this gunk to make bored apes before dumping it into the sewers. The episode is a great change of pace from the last few. It turns into a fun adventure where Charlie, Itchy, and this mouse mom, hey wait a minute, go into Carface's shop and try to shut the machine off. They get trapped in a pinball machine.
That fat, dumb, unkind dog sure plays a mean pinball.
Genius. And all the mices come back and gang up on Carface and Killer. I definitely feel like they were writing this with other Don Bluth movies in mind. The on-the-nose messaging about pollution makes it feel like one of those later American Tail sequels. Maybe some other time. As much as I dog on the animation style here, the digital coloring makes the characters look a lot cleaner. I wish they went with the style going forward and refined it, instead of, spoilers, doing it one time in the back half of next season. Let's talk about All Dogs Go to Heaven, the ride. And how cool that would be if it were a thing. I really wish that existed, specifically if they based it off the original film. A theme park ride would be horrible nightmare fuel for children and would at least be an amazing Defunctland video. Think like the old Fantasyland dark rides or Pirates of the Caribbean. I think a boat ride would be good based on the setting of the movie, and then they could have a drop that leads into this part. All Dogs Go to Heaven must not have been a valuable IP in the 90s to theme park developers, but I think there's a different reason why they didn't do anything with it. Could have been Disney, who very well owned the theme park rights to All Dogs Go to Heaven. Going back to the time when the original film came out, they had a deal with MGM. A lot of people might already know this because the park in Florida we know as Disney's Hollywood Studios used to be called MGM Studios. And of course, Disney in the 90s is not going to spring to use any Don Bluth characters. If the film was released by Universal, they could have had a chance to do it over on their side of the tracks, like what they had with An American Tail, but it was not meant to be. The closest thing to any dogs representation in a theme park did happen to be at Universal, and you can still go and see it today. In the queue for Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls at Islands of Adventure, you can see these two animal heads mounted on the wall, voiced by Dom DeLuise and Charles Nelson Riley.
Hey, Beaver, it's me. I have a question. What's today's show about anyway?
Oh, Snidely kidnaps Nell, and Dudley rides to the rescue.
Wait a minute, Beaver. Wasn't that yesterday's show?
Yeah, but these folks don't know that.
Not really anything, but I had no idea it was there until I was literally right under it. The deal between Disney and MGM obviously expired a long time ago, so Universal, I'm just saying, you have both a Mardi Gras event and a San Francisco area. Season 2, you notice some big changes. What small bits of quality animation there were are nearly gone. They start basing most of the episodes around Charlie having to be taught some lesson. Of course, he never learns anything and appears to get worse episode to episode. What turns this into a bigger problem is it feels like they start relying on the secondary characters less and less. The difference in amount of episodes featuring Sasha or Carface isn't that big, but when they use them later on, it feels less creative. There was this feeling in Season 1 where characters could show up more casually. Sasha in Cyrano de Barcanac, for example, or Carface and Killer in the Elmira one. Here it's selective with which ones they use, and when they do, they put them front and center so they can get the most out of the actor's time in the booth. Carface doesn't even show up in the one with Itchy and Killer. Forget about Annabelle or David doing anything. I know he's the main character, but the Charlie-centric episodes get boring after a while. Previous episodes could be about the other characters, giving them big or small roles as needed. You could even, heaven forbid, give another character besides Charlie some kind of arc, or give Charlie a story where he cares about other people. Itchy had a few stories back in season 1 where he was just as, if not more, the focus than Charlie. Now he only gets one this time around. They don't take advantage of it being a TV show where you can do something different with the characters in each episode. When every story revolves around Charlie doing the same thing with no room for other people, the world of the show feels empty. No new setting or one-off character or fantasy concept can change that, and unfortunately, it seems like those were the ideas driving a lot of post-season 1. Charlie and Itchy are sent to the circus by Annabelle in order to find evidence of the animals being mistreated.
No damn beast is gonna make the great DiGiorno back.
They get a video of said animal abuse, but Itchy happens to get a video of Charlie falling on his face as well. Despite the mission, Charlie doesn't want her to see the tape because he looks stupid in it. They take matters into their own hands, and instead of turning the embarrassing snapshot of Charlie at the Christmas party to the cops, they steal the elephant and a bunch of hijinks happens. They get cornered and finally decide to show the tape. There's only so much cheaply animated San Francisco hijinks I can take in an episode.
We certainly could use your help bringing her in.
Some weird animation to note here. This gag where the circus people and the police drive through the trees is missing a background. Annabelle has a chunk taken out of her arm. Wouldn't have Annabelle seen Charlie acting stupid whether she had the tape or not? When can she see them? Is it only when she's talking through reflective surfaces? Questions that will never be answered. The dynamic duo have to sneak onto an army base to show some army brat how to have fun. I don't relate to the kid character at all, but it's nice that they did an episode that represents someone in this living situation. They try their best to have him act like a kid while at the same time getting whipped into shape by this drill sergeant, played by the late R. Lee Ermey. Most will recognize him from Full Metal Jacket, but he's been typecast in so many other things that you've probably seen him before. Sergeant Yorkie is one of the best character designs they've done in the show. There's a lot of small details that make the whole thing come together that you don't see in a lot of their other dog characters. This is the closest to the first movie we've seen characters get shot. Charlie and Itchy join the army isn't the craziest thing that's happened, but the first 2 episodes we've watched show a general shift towards more gimmicky plot lines. If you didn't believe me, here's Charlie the Human. This episode contradicts the first movie and even the second in the dumbest way. This one opens with Charlie and Itchy not knowing what money is.
That'll be $64, sir.
Eh?
We don't have that paper stuff like humans, Charlie. Money.
No, why would anyone trade all that cool stuff for stupid paper?
This is gonna be my back credit card moment. I can't get over this. Seriously, what was the first movie all about? Even if you discount this shot and them gambling with real money, they still use some kind of currency in bones and steaks. That's the same in the TV show. So many episodes show the characters at the flea bite, which takes some form of currency for the food and drink that they sell.
Yeah, nice try, Charlie. It's still gonna cost you 3 bones.
The dogs would at least have some knowledge of currency from that. The first episode revolves around the dogs owning arcades and casinos, things that take money. Anyways, Charlie uses a miracle dog tag to turn himself into a human and gets to do all the things that humans do. While he's frolicking about in this new human body, a cop starts trailing him thinking he's some sort of tweaker. Charlie's human design is not what you'd expect. He, for one, looks way too much like the human Scooby-Doo. Also a combination of Link and Ray from the real Ghostbusters. I like his build, but I'm not digging his big schnoz and shoot-on ear that carried over from his normal design. Canon Anthro Annabelle, pretty cool. I remember the ending of this one being pretty cute.
I know I should never have tied you up. It was wrong. Can you ever forgive me?
Okay.
So, you'll show me how to untie this?
Maybe tomorrow.
I register this as the World War II episode, even though that doesn't take up half the runtime. David's moved on from magic and is now hyper-fixated on airplanes. No more hat money for him. Also, puberty happens.
Guys, my mom expects me home.
The episode starts off with some lame dog stuff. How funny is it that they pee on fire hydrants? Did you know dogs do that? After that, the 3 head to David's for the night.
David, honey, where have you been all afternoon?
Wait a minute. Did he get another new mom? After the whole drama with the stepmother and the new baby? What happened to her? Is she dead now too? I think the dad is to blame. If he keeps on marrying women who are dumb enough to bring stray, possibly disease-carrying dogs into their house, of course they're gonna be dropping like flies. Charlie and Itchy take it upon themselves to write David's history exam for him, and after some unfunny pantomime bits, they finally get into the World War II story. I'd compare the sense of humor in this one to Dog City 2, but Season 3 Dog City, where they tried to make it like Animaniacs and put a bunch of random skits in each episode that nobody liked. It's one of the better episodes to feature Charlie and Itchy futzing around for the entire thing. The bits with them fighting over the story are pretty cute. I don't get why they have Killer be the German pilot when they had a recurring character with a pronounced German accent that they invented for this show. Otto was completely wasted not being used for this episode. Who is this German commander supposed to be? I think he's some random Air Force guy, but why is he in shadow then? Did they put Adolf Hitler in All Dogs Go to Heaven the series? Charlie is sick of being a street dog, having to scrounge for food, getting beat up by Otto. He sees an escape when he finds a pampered show dog that looks just like him. They trade collars, what do you know? And both characters realize that they had it easy the way things were. The point in the story where Charlie gets sick of being a show dog is played more for laughs, having the agility course be this insane trial by fire. I appreciate the gag they were going for, but the animation and pacing of the show lessens the impact. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from an 11-minute SpongeBob episode. Specifically, it reminded me of C.H. Greenblatt for whatever reason. At the end, the other Charlie gets to be a normal pet, and Charlie goes back to being a street mutt. The premise is something I could see them doing in previous seasons, but with how many plop the characters into random stock scenarios, Prince and the Pauper isn't out of place. Here's what I don't get though, viewer. Charlie is a German Shepherd mix with a very noticeable chunk taken out of his ear, while Thor is a purebred. Why wouldn't this helicopter dog mom know that the two are different? It's clearly an Oliver and Company situation where the parents care more about the dog than the kid, so why wouldn't she notice? Why wouldn't she notice? Sorry to say, Otto fans, but this is his final appearance. Let's all give a moment of silence. I appreciate Otto now in his moment of death because they had the smarts not to use Carface for all these random altercations Charlie always gets in. They understood that he was too classy to be eating out of trash cans and wandering around alleys. Otto was taken to the pound and put to sleep shortly after this episode. Whack to the Future follows the formula of Charlie getting told he's X negative trait and then going on an adventure somewhat related to it. He tries getting a Sonic Frontiers boss to clean his place for a New Year's party, but that fails and everyone starts calling him out for being a lazy bum. He puts on a sleep machine that he bought from the same place as the robot, and it ends up Rip Van Winkling him into the far future.
What could I do? We didn't have ray guns back in the 20th century.
This is the funniest accidental contradiction they've done to any of the movies. Charlie literally got shot with one in 1939. Part of me wants to think that's a reference to the whole thing where they censored it, but I don't know. I don't think they knew that much about the movie. This one is littered with horrible dog tropes. In the first movie, the characters being dogs was an intentional choice to tell the story they wanted to. While All Dogs 1 and 2, I won't forget, had characters gnawing on bones and gambling with stakes, they didn't fall back on the typical cliches that this show does. The entire joke of this episode is about Charlie barking at the mailman, which wouldn't feel out of place in like a Sunday comic strip. The designs of the future world go hard. I don't know why they had the evil mailman dress up in this cool snake outfit. Robo Carface and Robo Killer are too funny not to bring up also, and how could I not mention the iconic character Tasha and Scratchy. Hey, wait a minute. Some scientist invents a potion that can turn whoever drinks it into a big, scary monster. Carface takes advantage of this and sneaks it into Charlie's food, making him into his own personal goon. The montage of buffed out Charlie going on a crime spree goes on for way longer than it needs to. I don't have that many notes on this episode because that part takes up nearly a third of it. On some streaming releases, I swear this one was called Dr. Beagle and Mangy Hyde, but on IMDb, and in the episode itself, it says Jekyll, so I don't know what's going on with that. I can't pin these TV segments on a single writer, but this is the same person who did Fearless Fido.
But instead you enhance the dog's savage impulses and created an abomination of science.
I guess a number of people on the staff clearly wanted to make a different show because the humor between the dog shenanigans and the fake news stories are near polar opposites.
Next up, cats. Do they go to heaven?
It's refreshing to see Carface and Killer actually involved, even if their schemes keep getting more and more outrageous. This was the first time in a while they play a role in an episode. Charlie gets to be a mentor to these angel puppies, yeah, now that idea is put in your head, and instead of teaching them valuable lessons, he makes them do menial tasks. Meanwhile, Carface has supposedly invented a machine that can turn nice dogs into vicious bad dogs, even without the use of the bone of scone. Charlie and the pups try to disable the machine, but ultimately fail because of Charlie's selfishness, or laziness, or abuse of authority, or whatever the word of the week was. Surprise, the whole thing was a setup by Annabelle and the Chief. There has to be a reason they never show what the Chief looks like. I think it's to imply that he's God? This franchise is full of ambiguity. Is this God? Is this the devil? Is this... you know who.
And I'm Kanye West.
They show scenes of Carface and Killer working on the thing for no other reason than to make the audience think that it's them and not Annabelle.
Over hill, over dale, they will snarl and bite and wail. There's talk of an album.
It's so weird. It's like they wrote themselves into a corner. Whoa dude, special title card, this one's gonna be a banger. Charlie's feeling insignificant, so Itchy decides to tell him a story about how one dog made a big difference. Doing a James Bond parody ticks another box on the sheet of things to do in your cartoon when you run out of ideas. Everyone is cast accordingly in their roles. Charlie gets called on by Annabelle to see what's up with Carface after all the wet dog food in the world starts to go missing. Carface in this universe runs a company that makes dry dog food, so of course he's behind it. He gets Sasha to try and poison Charlie, but she falls in love with him instantly.
Why don't you put some on your rice?
It's for your eyes only.
And they work together to stop his dastardly plot. They don't do anything new with the James Bond premise, but seeing a character escape against all odds is a little fun. The skeet shooting bit with the chihuahuas was a neat gag. Some of the outfits they put the characters in fit them pretty well, except for Annabelle's wig, I don't like that. Some guy out there on eBay has the entire shot of Itchy with the briefcase listed as individual animation cells. You could buy all of these and have this shot in 4K if you wanted. I actually own a fair few cells from the show. The website I got them from no longer exists, but when they were up, you were able to get these in mystery packs of 15 at a pretty decent price. My favorite is this one of Itchy. Wouldn't mind getting it framed someday. For some reason, Bess's dog training school has a party for just the dogs. No owners around. Aw yeah, time to go wild. Itchy gets invited as her plus one, but Charlie puts the idea in his head that he needs to act all fancy to impress everyone. You'd think an episode like this would be about Itchy trying to fit in and realizing that he should be himself or whatever, but luckily, they get bored of that and it turns into a prank war between them and Bess's old classmates. Charlie donning different disguises to repeatedly make fools out of them.
It is trash art, you peasant.
Of course I know about trash art. In fact, I love it.
Then you will love this.
The playing back and forth during the middle is like a cartoon from the 50s. It's so different from what the show usually does that it ends up being a refreshing change of pace. It also has Tiffany. What more could you ask for? Would you believe me if I told you they sent me an animation cell of this? Piece of voice actor trivia, she's actually played by the woman who does Clarabelle Cow in most modern Disney stuff.
Now, no stealing my technique, folks.
So it's sort of a Mickey and Friends reunion. You can really hear Daisy Duck come out whenever Bess starts chewing out her boyfriend for engaging in silly cartoon hijinks.
What in the world is going on?
This episode could have been awful. Thankfully, they don't contradict the original film too much. In order to teach this puppy and this ugly thing a lesson about working together, Charlie and Itchy relay the story about how they first met. Charlie used to run with a tough pack of street dogs, and Itchy was once a wimpy house pet. Charlie tricks Itchy into working for his gang just so he can sneak in and steal it from a jewelry store. Eventually, the innocent character realizes what's going on, and Charlie has to set things right, eventually leaving behind his life of crime for his newfound friend. It ends up being an unintentional retelling of All Dogs 1. I vibe with it, but my enjoyment of it goes down whenever I consider other parts of their relationship. I like to think something like this did happen in Louisiana in the 1930s, and parts of it are being embellished. Itchy's general demeanor and knowledge of engineering early on could mean he's more domesticated than Charlie. Charlie could also be mixing in the Anne-Marie story with how he met his friend to make it more of a parable. As someone who really enjoys seeing these characters, no matter the setting, it's fun to think about. I wonder what might have been different if they had the writers sit down and watch the movies, but part of me is glad they didn't. I can't shake the feeling that Carface's "I'm surrounded by morons" line would have been a regular catchphrase.
Morons! I'm surrounded by morons!
These characters' mouths are at 24 frames. I don't know why they did that. Charlie sees Doug Dimmadome give a prize to someone on TV for being a hero, so he tries to get on the news and be a hero too. Itchy has completely reached the point where he's sick of all the nonsense Charlie puts him through. It's so funny. They do get a reward, but the prize in question is having to watch over this guy's bird who's horrible to them. I know there are birds who look like that IRL, but why'd they give it boobs?
I'm here, my pretty.
The bird is kidnapped by Tom Kenny, so the two actually have to do something heroic and get it back. The character designers on the show really love to draw people who look like this. For as inconsistent as the other human designs are, you can always count on this type of freak to show up. Anytime the recognizable dog characters aren't on screen, the show looks like one of those things that shows up in the background of a family photo that people on Reddit try to identify. Throughout the show, there have been more bizarre episodes, but something about this one feels so wrong. It's like Charlie and Itchy have been inserted into some completely different show. The world around them in this one is way more cartoony than it usually is. Them being angels doesn't play into the story in any way, despite the plot centering around doing good deeds. I'm guessing their whole conceit for doing this one with digital colors was so that they could have these ghost characters be transparent. That's right, human ghosts are canon now, calling into question what the human afterlife is like. The only thing close to any humans in heaven is the hand of Gabriel at the beginning of 2. The ghosts here are shown to have been real people who were alive at one point. It's not like they have any unfinished business. They're around to guard the mansion that belonged to their old boss, but that's not keeping them stuck between heaven and hell or anything. It's weird how much focus they give to the ghosts. It's more a story about them. Charlie and Itchy only happen to stumble into it. Itchy is scared of everything, so Charlie has them stay in the mansion for the night. Meanwhile, this butler ghost can't scare any of these 90s ravers, so his sister challenges him to scare the dogs out. Scooby-Doo shenanigans, he and Itchy bond, and you can see the dogs and the ghosts are little parallels of each other. There's some lore to the mansion, and it ends with this troll coming out of the basement and tearing the place up. It ends up being a fun little Halloween-y story. Maybe one of my favorite episodes. Like the last one we talked about, Charlie and Itchy have no place in this ghost plot, but it comes together better than whatever the bird one was. If you've been paying attention, each of the previous 2 seasons came in at a standard 13 episodes. To round it out at an even 40 total, Season 3 has 14. Though All Dogs the series doesn't have an episode-to-episode continuity, the finale attempts to wrap up the events of the series in a neat little bow. All the main canine characters have a role in this, and the episode tries to give a thesis for Charlie's character. Charlie is called into Heavenly Court for supposedly misusing a miracle dog tag to rescue a crate of steaks instead of this old lady dog. Carface, Itchy, and Killer all tell their different versions of the story, of course with different perspectives. I always like when shows do that. Charlie eventually tells his side, and they add it all up to find out that Belladonna was actually the old lady, and didn't get rescued because she's a demon, and miracles don't work on demons. Belladonna gets trapdoored for trying to set up Charlie, and all the angels realize that while Charlie might not be the most upstanding, if he can foil Belladonna, he must be doing something right. Killer's version of the events is pretty funny, and it was news to me he had a part in this.
So I sent my flunky Carface. Your flunky!
Since it was my first time watching through and not in random clips on YouTube. Carface's nerd outfit is great, even if they accidentally use the model for it after the flashback. Speaking of animation errors, they have Belladonna speak Annabelle's dialogue.
You say you are a witness.
It's like in the original Ninja Turtles cartoon where they'd switch bandana colors. I can't stand Itchy's take on the story, the way he idolizes Charlie. That contradicts not only the movies, but your average episode of the show. Itchy is usually the first person to catch on to Charlie's BS. They don't give him much else to do besides that. Strange how your sidekick character takes a back seat in the grand finale. The rest of it goes out of the way to bring back most other things from the show, like this montage of different times Charlie's messed up
And misused a miracle dog tag.
Wouldn't call every single one of them misusing a miracle dog tag, but the thought is there. Sasha even gets something to do. While the Ace Attorney shenanigans are going on, Charlie makes her sing so that Itchy can buy time to expose Belladonna. Based on everything I've heard about Ace Attorney, characters bursting into song to stall a trial doesn't sound out of place. The song itself is one of my favorites from the show, if only for the melody. It's the kind of horrible earworm you'd expect out of the Sherman Brothers.
And when you're full, you'll be completely happy. So why not be happy now?
Nothing past All Dogs 2 got a proper soundtrack release, unsurprisingly, so the only way you're gonna hear this is a YouTube upload, with all the sound effects still intact.
And loved ones to
So was it worth it? In YouTube money, only time will tell. No, but to rectify my ephemeral childhood memories of this show, I'd say so. If you've only seen the movies, the show is a complete trip. Season 1 is actually pretty fine as its own thing, but later on, it goes downhill. Every time someone brings up All Dogs in the context of the main film series, they always throw the show aside and skip to what came after. I get it's a time commitment, but it's so interesting. In some way, I'm more attached to these versions of Charlie, Itchy, and others that show up here. Isn't that scary? Only a few episodes try for some emotion the way the films do, while the majority end up in this lethargic void of half-baked cartoon slapstick. The animation is cheap, the writing is bland, I'm not sure why it exists, and I think the world would be better off if the resources used to make it went to other things, but I can't look away. For all the frustration, there's enough so bad it's good energy and nuggets of genuine charm to keep me watching. You just need to watch the right episodes. Top 10, ready, here we go. The Big Fetch, All Creatures Great and Dinky, Kibbleland, The Rex Files, The Perfect Dog, Puppy Sitter, Haunted Is as Haunted Does, Best in Itchy's Dog School Reunion, and Dogs in the House. Subject to change. Merry Christmas! Ho ho ho! What you say, it's not Christmas when I'm watching this? It is now! An All Dogs Christmas Carol released straight to video in the holiday season of 1998, taking place during or after the events of the TV series. It's still weird how people skip straight to this one, because without it, you don't have context for why Charlie and Itchy are back on Earth, and for who this is. Well, they never explain the former. Christmas Carol is a return to form in some ways, another feature-length installment from our doggy friends. The story it tells isn't a unique one, and it takes an unreasonably long time to tell it, but it's above the quality of the series in a few ways. It's Christmas in San Francisco, and all the dogs are gathered at the flea bite to celebrate. Part of their Christmas gathering is to raise money for this movie's Tiny Tim. That's right, they don't call it an All Dogs Christmas Carol for nothing. Carface eventually shows up, letting you know he's our Scrooge. He uses a magic dog whistle to hypnotize everyone into handing over their loot, and takes off. Charlie and Itchy try to get the presents back, but actually find out that Belladonna is behind the whole thing. She's got an even bigger whistle, which she plans to use for the same thing but on a much larger scale. There's only so much time before Belladonna plans to ruin Christmas, so the gang decide to change Carface's ways by invoking a classic tale. A Christmas Carol adaptation is a crutch to fall back on for sure, but it's an effective structure for you to put your characters into. That's the reason why so many shows do it. All Dogs Christmas Carol is one of the looser adaptations. They only have so many characters to go around, so Charlie has to double up on roles. They could have used David, or Bess, you know? Can't believe they forgot Bess. Tiny Tim's life isn't just at stake, but also the entire fate of San Francisco. Belladonna isn't trying to erase Christmas from existence, or even cause physical harm to anyone. She wants to hypnotize all the dogs in San Francisco and have them steal one Christmas present per family and bring it to Alcatraz Island where her giant whistle is. If I was a demon who wanted to ruin Christmas, I would have pulled a Jack Skellington or something, or make a machine that takes all their presents without using people's dogs. The only people who this is gonna affect are people who celebrate Christmas and have dogs. A large population, sure, but that narrows it down pretty hard. It's one present per household, and it has to be something a dog could hold in its mouth. And how are the dogs gonna get to Alcatraz Island? Is part of the plan that they... Is there a ferry that she set up? Is part of the plan that they're all gonna walk into the water and drown? Is that the real end goal? This is Care Bears level villainy.
I get to ruin Christmas!
If you ignore that, the Christmas Carol aspect is adapted well into this canine-centric universe. They were wise to not stick too close to the source material. They weave this through line of Carface taking the blame for the stuff he did as a puppy. I want to say that comes back as him accepting responsibility for what he's done and making it right, but I could be attributing too much to this movie by claiming that. Tiny Tim also goes through something like that with his owner. Wait a minute. Is that David's mom? What is up with this family? Carface's actual arc is spaced out with a bunch of nothing, particularly at the start and the end. Charlie and Itchy getting the presents back takes up more screen time than it needs to, and so does the final confrontation with Belladonna. If they trimmed that and streamlined some other bits, they could have had a 40-minute or hour-long special. As much as I like there being 3 All Dogs movies, that would have been best. Don't expect the main characters to do much here. Itchy and Sasha get nothing outside of their respective roles as the ghost of Christmas past and present. Even then, their personalities aren't compatible with most interpretations of the book. Very odd how you don't have the girl one be the past and Dom DeLuise be the present. Genuinely, he was born to play that role. Charlie here is more mellowed out than he was in 2 and in the TV show, maybe because of some off-screen character arc. This is the first we see him where he's a genuine force for good. I also like this line from Itchy.
Yeah, Charlie, nobody Nobody rips off kids while we're on duty.
How far these two have come. The beginning of the film is the most villainous we've seen him in a while, after his edge was continuously dulled down in the TV show. Redeeming him, although hard if you remember all the murder and child kidnapping, was a great way to cap off this series. The music in the movie is some of the best to be sung by Charlie and the gang. There's only a small amount of songs, but they all really hit. Carface goes through a song detailing his descent into villainy while reminiscing about his puppyhood. Belladonna and Killer sing a duet about how they each love Christmas for their own reasons.
It's time to pass out candy canes. I'm dipped in slime.
All Dogs 1 has Big Lipped Alligator moment, 2 has Gordon Freeman. Can we please make candy canes dipped in slime the thing for this movie, please? This is one of my favorites. The lyrics are perfectly cheesy, and both actors aren't just singing, they're performing this one.
This eggnog is so creamy, it ought to be crime. Whether I'm poisoning punch or setting dolls on fire.
I love the Mars Girl review of this movie where she says this.
And we're blessed with another musical number sung by Charles Nelson Riley. I mean, really, I could have lived without it.
Oh yeah, Tony Award winner Charles Nelson Riley. Yeah, how horrible. Charlie gets a gospel number where he taunts Carface with the prospect of him going to hell.
You'll still have eternity to spend with Wonder Who.
I guess all dogs go to heaven, but that's only a one-time ticket. The movie implies that he's gotta work his way back to goodness. You can tell Steven Weber either took voice lessons between this and the show, or he was having the time of his life recording this.
Listen close to what I say, every dog has his judgment day.
The real highlight is the opener. The lyrics tell you nothing other than we love Christmas, it is Christmas, we are dogs, but it's so warm and jolly.
The candy, the presents, always start my heart beating fast.
The animation during it sets a nice precedent. It's more ambitious than what you get from the show, but that low budget still rings through. Something you'll notice real quick is that the movie switches back and forth between cell and digital coloring. Most of it is digital when they have to animate the characters singing and dancing, or when they have to pull off some kind of effect. The digital episodes of the show generally looked better, but the higher budget for this makes me prefer the traditional ink and paint. With the use of computers, that also means you get those weird camera movements and tacky effects, lens flares, lighting on this rope that doesn't match, 90s CGI, multiplying crowd shots, and now there are 8 Sashas running around. And there are some great bits of animation here, better than anything in the show. A good portion of the consistently fluid stuff happens later on. Baby Carface has some good bits, and I can't get over how bouncy this shot is. Actually, roll that back again. Yeah, that's nice. It's the best Belladonna's ever been animated. They even changed her look around a little. I'm more fond of the cooler purple and hair meant to match Annabelle. Her pineapple head just looks so nasty in comparison. Just shave it off at that point. I hope all my Belladonna heads in the audience know that this is the definitive version of her. We even get to see her take wing. Carface is canonically one of those bulldog puppies that they make wear stupid outfits in those Instagram videos, 100 years before that was a thing. Still think it's cute? Look how he grew up. And All Dogs Christmas Carol drags in a lot of places, but as someone who's binge-watched this entire franchise, seeing the positive aspects of this movie has restored my faith. It's a better send-off to these characters than other things we could have gotten. I brought up the Wendy's toys in passing. They didn't come with any play features and were simply figures of the characters. Nothing to get all that excited about. Well, they made a toy of the Big Lipped Alligator, now that's exciting. Like most fast food toys, they come with inserts, but these are special because I found out they're written from Charlie's perspective. As I write this, I can't find the scan I did of one of them, but it was about Flo, the dog who looks after the puppies, and it was something to the effect of, Flo runs the orphanage and she really keeps me in check along with all those kids. This means that we have descriptions of Itchy, Carface, Anne Marie, and King Gator, all from Charlie's perspective. I have the King Gator toy, but it didn't come in the pack. If someone's willing to take one for the team and buy a new in-bag King Gator, we could finally see what Charlie actually thinks of the guy. I'm being serious, I'm actually interested to hear what they wrote for that. When 2 came out, they had a tie-in with Subway. It doesn't look like they did a commercial for this, unlike Wendy's, and there aren't any print ads available. These all have very basic play features. Charlie is a pull back and go toy, and the others would, like, move their head or something. David didn't do anything. This is the only merchandise Sasha ever had. At least David had a Subway toy and this reference model used by the animators. Flo had more representation, surprisingly, being both a Wendy's toy and a plush back when the first film came out. Despite having a pretty marketable design and being a main character by the time they stopped making stuff, Annabelle never got anything. I would have loved an off-model kids meal toy or like a really messed up looking plush, but it's too late now. All 3 of these movies actually had restaurant tie-ins, if you can believe it. And All Dogs Christmas Carol had plushes you could buy at Denny's. Someone even saved a cardboard standee from the time. That's so cool. And a print ad. Better than Subway. A while ago, All Dogs 1 and 2 were added to MGM Plus, with some relative fanfare. MGM is a few years late to starting a new streaming service, but if they're dead set on producing originals, I think we could see a new All Dogs movie or show, much to a lot of people's dismay. It's one of the only family franchises they own that they could actually dredge up. So what would an All Dogs Go to Heaven nostalgia cash grab look like in the 2020s? There are a few options. One is you opt for the Disney treatment and make a horrible looking live action version. They genuinely might have another Cats 2019 if they decide to go down that route. Imagine this in live action. Imagine this in live action. Imagine this in live action. Even if they didn't have the budget for that, they could always take a German Shepherd, some little girl plucked from an Old Navy commercial, and make some random other movie to bank on the name. Nowhere has there been another character in the history of fiction who was more in danger of being recast as Chris Pratt. A cartoon would for sure either be a preschool show or something aimed at young adults. Dog characters in cartoons have been designated as for babies for the past decade and a half now, and isn't Paw Patrol the biggest thing ever? They would do that. Call me a crackpot, but All Dogs also has the potential in the theater kid market if they're willing to take the risk at something more mature. Instead of annoying dog cliches, they can do annoying Zoomer religion cliches, like biblically accurate angels, and have the demons be the misunderstood good guys. That would actually be my worst case scenario. I genuinely would prefer if the Swan Princess people swoop in and buy the rights and start pumping out CG All Dogs movies with religious messaging. At least that studio would probably try and follow the original somewhat. If somebody has a story to tell that happens to involve a new set of characters who are dogs and the afterlife, that would be the best case scenario. If any of you people have seen Centaur World on Netflix, I wouldn't mind the people who did that trying to have a crack at it. Alright, I know what it looks like. The music and story are not that bad. No matter how you slice it, the legacy of the original can't be tainted, tarnished, or cheapened in the eyes of cartoon reviewers more than it has been already. What is the legacy of All Dogs Go to Heaven? It was one of the first children's films to deal with death in this way and to have a morally great character at the center. It pushed the envelope in that sense, and I don't think people give it the credit it deserves. A lot of mainstream animated films nowadays have the same plot, basically. It's hard not to think about how ahead of its time it was. It terrified a generation, but made them laugh and cry, like a Family Guy. The sequels, as much as I appreciate them, are a stain on the first, I guess. It's a shared trauma. It was surprising if a somewhat well-known animated film didn't get at least one after-the-fact straight-to-video installment. All Dogs is more of a cult classic than mainstream hit, so the sequels don't have the same effect that some of the Disney ones do, or the bajillion Land Before Times. As unnecessary as all of this was, they did employ some talented people, some of who would later go on to make their mark in grander ways. Okay, Steven Weber, what is the funniest thing he could also be in? All Dogs Go to Heaven, the series, Charlie. If you guessed the principal from 13 Reasons Why, you were correct. He was also the bad guy in the live-action Fairly Odd Parents movie, which would have been great if he was acting alongside Otto as Mr. Crocker, but his actor only started doing him in live action in the recent sitcom show, so it's a complete missed opportunity. Charlie and Otto working together. Here's a fun connection. Series producer Paul Sabella actually went on to do a lot of the Generation 3 My Little Pony cartoons. If you look on IMDb, you can see a number of crew members from the show and A Christmas Carol worked on those. They even had the same songwriters. And I found this out way after the fact. The producer on All Dogs 2, Kelly Ward, has a ton of credits on other films, but most notably, he's this guy in Grease. No matter what they did with it, All Dogs was certainly unique. The audience for it might be niche, but I wouldn't have it any other way. They're in San Francisco in the late 90s. Do you think they would have ran into each other? I know you're laughing at this right now. They could have met Sonic. Sonic could have met Charlie and Itchy. Sonic could have met Bess. You're laughing. Sonic could have met Bess, and you're laughing. Also, there's an evil version of, well, All Dogs the series did come first, so...